All right. All right. Here we are. Here we are now. Entertain us. Yeah. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I shouldn't sing that song too much. Because we know it's gonna be like demonetize. We're demonetizing your shit. We're demonetizing your shit. Propane and propane accessories. Cotton Rusty, good to see you guys. Right away, you guys are like on the button. You're just like, clank. Yep. I sell propane and propane accessories. Hope you guys are doing well out there today. I worked Capitalism today, so I worked a full day. Here I am, doing the stream anyway. Was that you, Rusty, that said, "Hey, it's Canadian Commie"? Yeah, I'm around. You'll see me everywhere I go. One of the things that I've definitely noticed, because I've been like lurking on the internet forever, right? Like that's who I am. I'm a guy who is on the internet. I've definitely noticed that there's a lot of 15-year-olds now. There always were 15-year-olds. Right? But there seems to be like an influx. Seems like there's this like influx happening that, and I think, yeah, shut down the frickin' city. I feel like right now we're in this like weird little bubble, and it's because of guys like Shapiro and the far rights, like guys like Shapiro, guys like Peterson, right? They clip into TikTok videos and things like this, and they get spread around on the algorithm, and so you end up with all these like 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds being like, "Yeah, just grind set, bro. You just need to work harder, bro." And then they go out into the real world. Right? They're going to go into the real world, and they're going to realize pretty fast that these guys are frauds. And how are they going to realize it? By getting a job and having a job for a week, and realizing, oh, this is total horseshit. This whole like grind set idea is like total horseshit. They're going to encounter guys like me. They're going to encounter people out in the world that if they're walking around saying like grind set, bro, just grind set, they're going to get shut down really hard. And this bubble is going to pop. There's this bubble that's going to pop where, like, one of the things that I think is really worth talking about again, one of the things that I get caught in, and I know that I get caught in it, and I definitely get into this mindset. By the way, good to see you, Ligon Dizzy. Good to see you, Oddity, man. I'm so glad you guys are here. It's so great. I keep forgetting that just because I know this information and that a whole lot of people know this information, right? That I keep forgetting that like people don't know this in a big kind of way. And I really feel like this graph, this is from the Broadbent Institute. You can find this graph really, really easily by just searching Broadbent Institute wealth inequality graph. Most of the time, if you search wealth inequality graph, this is what will come up, especially for Canada, right, in Canada. So this graph is super important because not only does it show the wealth disparity that actually exists in the country, it also shows the disparity between what Canadians actually think the wealth inequality looks like. And I think one of the things that I know for myself that I need to get better at is reaffirming, especially to these 15-year-old kids who are just coming into reality. And of course, the 15-year-old kids who are 40 and never actually grew up or had to confront anything real in their life. I think this is an important graph to show people, because I do think, so here's what the wealth inequality actually looks like. If you look at the dots down here, so you can see the society is broken up into 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, right? Down at the bottom 10% of the society own nothing. They own literally nothing. They have no assets. They've got absolutely no wealth whatsoever. That's 10% of the society has nothing. And then you compare this to how Canadians think it is. This line here that says think, and then the line that runs across here is what people think wealth inequality looks like in Canada. This is what they think it looks like. And this shows you a massive, 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 like grotesque disparity. That to get to where Canadians think the poorest people are in Canada, you have to get to like the 50% mark. Like quite literally, maybe the top 40, bottom 50% of the society right here. Let's say like 48%. You got to get to that percentile. So you're only, if you're the average Canadian thinking about how much wealth everybody has, or talking about the wealth inequality, or talking about what's going on in the society, you're probably thinking, oh, people are the poorest person in Canada. The poorest person in Canada is actually as rich as the 48th richest person in Canada, or the 48th percentile of wealth in Canada. That's an enormous, ridiculous, absurd discrepancy. That's being wrong on a level. That's being wrong on a level that cannot be accounted for. Like, this is beyond stupidity. Like, it's beyond silliness. If you are the average Canadian living in Canada, you think that people who have absolutely nothing are actually in the middle of the society, basically, in terms of how much wealth they have. And the propaganda system that exists in this country, is doing everything to ensure that that's what you think. I'm having fairly regular conversations with people now who are actually saying out loud that, oh, you know, you can make it work, right? You can make this work, right? Sure, the rent is $2,200 in Toronto, right? Sure, the minimum wage, a single wage earner certainly can't pay the rent in Toronto, but you can make it work. Just get a roommate, right? That's this sort of brain dead thinking that says, oh no, people who have literally nothing are actually in the middle of the society. They actually have this much wealth. And if you're wrong about this, right? If your perception about this is incorrect, then you are going to be incorrect about basically every other thing. That this is the linchpin. This is the foundation upon which all things rest. If you are incorrect about how much wealth actually and where the wealth is in the society, if you are incorrect about where the wealth is in the society, you are 100% wrong about everything else. And the average Canadian thinks this way. And then on top of that, when they get to the upper scale, they don't understand exactly how much wealth has been accrued at the very top, right? That the skew is so much worse than people think. And this graph came out in like 2016, right? So it's actually much, 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 much worse than this now. Because there was a transfer of wealth over the COVID period. There was a transfer of wealth over the COVID period from the working class to the upper class. In America, the transfer of wealth was $3 trillion. But a similar transfer of wealth occurred here in Canada. And so this discrepancy that you're seeing is actually way worse now. But we're not seeing graphs about that. I wonder why. I wonder why we're not seeing any graphs about that particular phenomenon, right? So we have to actually get really serious about informing people and telling people about what the wealth distribution actually looks like and where the skew actually lies. Because most people are walking around believing that the bottom 20, 30% of the society, literally the bottom 35% of the society has as much wealth as like the middle class. That's what they actually think. It's baffling, it's boggling, it's shocking to see. Like, it's shocking to see how people actually think that people in the top, like, 60%, right? Like, that's where it actually meets. That if you're in the 60% mark of the society, it actually meets with the expectation. And then everything below that is phenomenally wrong. And everything above that is phenomenally wrong. Like, the delusion is shocking to see. The delusion is shocking to see. And what I think is even more shocking is that people, I think they want to stay this way. I don't think they actually want to confront what this actually means. Because if they were to actually confront what this actually means, then this is the only rational response. Right? This is the only rational response that remains. Right? In LA, over 11,000 LA workers plan to strike, hoping to shut down city. Yeah, good. This is the only rational response that remains. There is nothing left to do. There's nothing left to talk about. Right? That's very obvious that we cannot negotiate with these detached psychopaths who rule us. It's very obvious that they're not interested in solving the problem. Right? It's very obvious that they're not actually interested in solving the problems that face us. That we are living in a society, and this is something that's actually really starting to settle in for me. Like, I am an elder millennial, right? I'm on the cusp. Like, I was like 2, maybe 1 year off of being Gen X technically, but I'm I'm a millennial technically. I'm like right on the cusp of it, and I'm starting to see other millennials become my age, get up into mid-30s, get up to be 40. I literally have people saying to me now, like, I think we're all just gonna die. Like, I these are the things that people are starting to say, that the millennials are just sort of getting into a place where they're just saying, okay, that's it. Like, we had our shot. We thought that we were gonna do it, but we're not gonna do it. That it's over. That we are actually gonna die. And I'm talking to kids, like fresh out of high school kids, who are literally saying, yeah, there's nothing here. Like, there's nothing here. Like, it's all just making latte jobs. And if it's not making latte jobs, then you end up just working as some, like, office job hack for some billionaire cocksucker who's going to replace you with AI the second he possibly can. Like, this is what we're looking at in this society. And then what's the response? What's the response of the psychopath class? Like, what's the response of the psychopath class? It's outright to just get as many immigrants in as possible. This is the solution for the psychopath class, right? That we are actually in a population decline now. That the psychopath class has destroyed the country so dramatically and so systematically that the abandonment of the millennial and Gen Z and then whatever the next generation we're going to call it, the apocalypse babies, right? Gen apocalypse. Whatever kind of policies existed in order to actually help people have been completely dismantled and completely destroyed, systematically and on purpose, and unapologetically. That this is why I call them the psychopath class, because they're unapologetically destroying the civil society on purpose and telling you just get a better job, like a fucking psychopath would. And I am starting to see people around me, not just internet people, but people who are actually around me, waking up to this hard reality that this society has lost its mind, that we are ruled by desperate, crazed psychopaths, that we're not going to bring children into this world. Moreover, we can't bring children into this world. And what's the response to that from the psychopath class? Just have babies anyway. Literally, you can go watch Jordy P say that. He'll just go tell you, just have kids anyway. It'll just, I know it seems difficult, but it'll be, blah, blah, blah. Literally someone who's never achieved anything in his life, sat in a room, wrote a book nobody read, right? Basically, his big achievement is selling out to the fossil fuel industry to become a climate change denialist, right? Crow Guy with a strong first comment. CR Strifey, good to see you. Radio Halifax, good to see you. Crow Guy, no. I say no more kids. I mean, that's what it's going to be, though. Like, and the solution from the psychopath class isn't, well, maybe we should make the quality of living actually decent so people can actually afford to have kids, so that they can actually settle down, so that the society isn't so shaken up. No. The solution from the psychopath class is let's get more immigrants in. Let's use the temporary foreign worker program, which is a slave system that exists here in Canada, to get slaves into the society, right? Let's expedite that for people. Let's cut the paperwork. If you're a quote-unquote trusted employer, i.e., a corporate psychopath, then you get more slaves faster. This is the solution, right? This is the solution. Now, our society won't help the average person. Marriage, the lack of attention, and mental health care, it's failing young people in Canada every day. Absolutely. Like, we are living in a society, and for the last 20 years at least, I can safely say that I have been completely gaslit, that the society was absolutely gaslighting me, right? I won't speak for you guys out there, but I suspect that you have a similar experience, that you are also gaslit, and you have been getting gaslit, that it's all just bootstrap yourself and like it's all this Ben Shapiro, Jordy P stuff, right? Which is gaslighting, and that's all we should call it. Like it's not advice. It's not there to help anybody. It's there to gaslight people to continue putting in their support into the capitalist death cult. That's the reason it exists, right? That's the reason it exists. And the majority of people, right? The majority of people are actually collapsing because of it, right? This is from 2012, so this is 10 years ago, 11 years ago, right? Like, the poorest 10% in the society actually owe money. They have negative 0.2% wealth. The next percentile has 0.1%, third 0.5%. It's not until you get into the fourth percentile that you even have a percentage at all. Like, where's the middle class? Where's the middle class? And this has gotten much worse. Like I say, over the COVID period, there was an extraction of wealth, at least in the United States, of $3 trillion, right? And we're starting to see the dramatic results of this, the very serious results of what it means to abandon a society. Like, what does it mean to actually abandon a society and to provide literally no support whatsoever for anyone? That the only advice anybody is willing to actually give is just fend for yourself, right? That's essentially what they're saying now. Like, the only thing the capitalist death cult is willing to say now is do what you're told, right? So shut your mouth, essentially, and let us abandon you. Just let us abandon you. Do what you're told, shut your mouth, and let us abandon you. And what's the result? From the Rolling Stone. These Nazis want to turn New England into a white ethno-state. White supremacists are calling for a peaceful separation from the United States and a ban on people of color moving to New England. A neo-Nazi front group is demanding that New England secede and establish itself as a white nation. Decrying enemies that are all around us and vowing to defend racial integrity, the People's Initiative of New England published a revolutionary manifesto on July 27th advocating separation from the United States of America. PINE is a creation of the neo-Nazi organization NSC 131. while the latter functions outside the political system, with often violent street confrontations and stiff-arm Heil Hitler salutes. Pine is intended to give those same toxic political beliefs a more palatable political framework. If NCS 131 exists to shock, Pine is an effort to seduce, tempting far-right conservatives into explicitly white nationalist politics. The Pine document appeals to nostalgia and shame. Our people, who once built the most prosperous nation the world has ever seen, have been embarrassed, sold out, and demoralized. It alleges that the only option is to establish a sovereign and unified New England, and thereby set an example for revolutionaries everywhere. In a nation where a previous secession attempt by racists sparked the bloodshed of the Civil War, Pine fancifully imagines a peaceful separation. Yeah. The call for a New England ethno-state, posted to Substack, marks a coming out for Pine on what it calls its formal introduction. The initiative was quietly launched in April by NSC 131, also known as National Social Club Anti-Communist Action. Think of Pine as a Nazi wolf in MAGA clothing. Pine is basically NSC 131, but instead of going out and punching people at drag shows, they're showing up at Trump rallies and recruiting Trumpers into out-and-out white supremacy, says Chris Goldsmith, founder of Task Force Butler, the veterans-led anti-fascist nonprofit that published a 300-page dossier on NSC 131 for use by journalists and law enforcement in April. It's still white supremacist bullshit, but it's a little less abrasive, Goldsmith says of Pine's agenda. The initiative, he insists, seeks to blackpill Americans who've bought into Tucker Carlson and the Great Replacement conspiracy theory and move them down the pipeline to full-fledged fascism. In fact, Pine's Substack manifesto soft pedals its Nazism, leading with patriarchal values and economic populism. It's only upon finding the group's Telegram feed that readers discover the dark intention behind Pine's call for racial integrity. A white ethno-state with non-white immigration banned and existing non-white residents left with an undetermined fate. Designated as a neo-Nazi group by the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League, NSC 131 unabashedly deploys the salutes and symbols of Hitler's genocidal German regime. The group's literature brags that by using the swastika, we place ourselves in the most stark opposition possible to everything that we would change in modern society. NSC 131 members who dress in khakis, black hoodies, and cover their faces are notorious for staging confrontations at liberal events, spewing hate, and rumbling with anti-fascists. Its literature declares, "We become less fringe with every successful action. Our presence normalizes the impossible." The group pointedly adopts the culture war crusades of modern conservatism as its own, with declarations like, "We remind our people that it is Nazism to oppose drag queen story hour and critical race theory." Pine, by contrast, is presenting itself in gauzier focus, as a trad-life political party that just so happens to champion white supremacy. Its logo, an evergreen tree inside an oval, is not obviously offensive, and parts of its political agenda, e.g., blasting international trade agreements or demanding government support for father-led family units, overlap with mainstream MAGA conservatism. Attempting to draw America Firsters into its ranks, Pine representatives have distributed literature at Trump rallies in states like New Hampshire. Goldsmith cautions severely that despite the differing names, logos, and tactics of NSC 131 and Pine, the objective of the two groups is singular. The one way you achieve a white ethno-state is the forced removal of or mass killings of people of color. Right? Pine is using synonyms, Goldsmith believes, but still seeking to accomplish the same ethnic cleansing goal of the neo-Nazi version of their brand. An email to Pine leadership seeking comment was not returned, but NSC 131's own literature announcing the launch of Pine explained the relationship between the two groups. The Nationalist Social Club was convened and implemented as the vanguard of our people, reads a Telegram post from April. We have taken to the streets and have shown our people that we are fighting for them. By contrast, the post continues, Pine will paint a more vivid picture of our people, of what our future could look like, promising that this approach will broaden our support base and propel our message further than ever by articulating our worldview in a more traditional political manner. A Pine political platform, also posted to Telegram, lays out 5 of the group's demands, including that New England will be formally recognized as a white homeland and a sovereign state, and that institutions of the U.S. federal government will no longer be recognized, and that we will end all non-white migration to New England. With the goal of maintaining our ethnic identity, the group's intentions for what happens to existing non-white residents of the region is darkly unspoken. Why is the group championing the Northeast for its revolution? New England is the whitest region in North America, and it is here that our unique pan-European identity was originally established, Pine literature alleges, adding, if someone is not of European descent, they are not a New Englander. The Substack introduction touts Pine members as a family of men of action who champion tradition, family, and community. And rather than showcasing the ruffian tactics NSC 131, Pine social media posts feature photos of members removing graffiti or cleaning up debris after the recent flood damage in Vermont. Through activism and community outreach, we aim to drive this cultural change, Pine posts insist, which will foster a more favorable political environment for us later. But even as it seeks to mainstream its hate through Pine, NSC 131 has been active and intimidating in its familiar manner. In June, the group made national headlines for disrupting a drag story hour in Concord, New Hampshire. Watch a brief video of that chilling encounter as filmed by the drag queen Juicy Garland. I'm not going to play this video. NSC 131 has also had a string of success in court. In June, founder Chris Hood was found not guilty of the charge of affray stemming from a street fight in Massachusetts, and in July, a New Hampshire judge dismissed a civil rights complaint brought by the state against NSC 131 for a racist banner drop executed over a state highway, with a sign that read, "Keep New England White." The judge ruled that the action, though reprehensible by most civilized standards, was not illegal. NSC 131 has also recently amped up its public relations, seemingly in response to the dossier distributed by Task Force Butler that labeled them a violent terrorist gang that engages in harassment against religious, racial, and ethnic minorities, the LGBTQIA+ community, and others deemed enemies. The neo-Nazi group now asserts on social media that it is a non-violent pro-white fraternity in the New England area that engages in First Amendment-protected political protests and demonstrations. The group, which has a Telegram channel that hypes videos of its violent street encounters, adds, sometimes at these events, outside agitators beyond our control threaten and attack us for exercising our First Amendment rights. But it alleges we have never attacked anyone, and that physical altercations were brought on by outside agitators beyond our control. The group also insists we reject any and all false assertions that we were in any way a gang, criminal enterprise, or terrorist group. It also denigrates Task Force Butler founder Goldsmith as Gold Brick, blasting him as a Jew who engages in deception for a living. NSC 131 is also continuing its strategy to occupy the front lines of the culture wars. A recent Telegram post describes the actions of members who patrolled the parking lot outside of the Jason Aldean concert in Hartford, Connecticut, purporting to be engaged in white community defense. The group positioned itself in opposition to Black Lives Matter and Antifa-adjacent agitators who were protesting Aldean's single hit, which has been accused of glorifying lynching. Try that in a small town. The decline is happening. The decline is happening. We have a fellow on Twitch here, Alex. Alex writes, white ethnostates are bullshit, same as black ethnostates or other ethnostates. I mean, I would say that ethnostates are a generally bad idea, yeah. Humanity must be repaired, reconstructed from year zero. I mean, that seems to be where we're heading, Alex. It seems like we are heading back to year zero. I've been saying for a long time on this channel that we are heading for a balkanization. Crow Guy writes, scary times, absolutely. Seems like the government wants to slowly kill us off using chemicals, cars, people killing each other, war. Don't fall for the trap of believing that it is actually a concerted effort. Like, capitalists, basically their plan is make money for themselves. That's it. It's just a worship of money. Oh, I know, Milo. Oh, I know. Got a little pug right here, guys. You see a little pug? Here's my little pug. Pug. You're famous, Milo. You're famous. Oh, Alex is from the Balkans, so you know all about imperial invasion then. Hey, Snake, how you doing? Comrade Snacks. What a great name. Comrade Snacks, strong first comment. Everyone just moved to Yukon. We will start a homestead community. Yeah, I mean, don't be surprised if people start doing that. Like, don't be surprised to start seeing that. Like, the decline is going to happen rapidly. It's going to happen a lot faster than I think people think it's going to happen. The negative consequences of ceding all of this power to the psychopath death cult and the psychopath class is going to blow back on us in big and serious ways. And there's just no two ways about it. That you can't build a society on saying you can't build a society on abandoning everyone in said society. You just can't do that. That I knew that we were in trouble when these graphs started to come out. When these graphs showing how bad the wealth inequality actually was in our society, I knew that we were in trouble when this started to happen. And now we know it's worse, right? I don't have a graph to show you because, surprise, surprise, they're likely not coughing up that information. If you guys can find a more modernized, updated version of said graph, I would like to know about it, because I haven't found it. And the wealth inequality that exists, like, you literally cannot build a society this way. It's just possible. It's just not possible to do so. And the society has geared itself to collapse completely, right? It is gearing itself to collapse completely, and we have to begin, we should have begun preparing for it decades ago when this first came out. And truthfully, what we actually need is another Occupy movement, right? It's random material wealth is more important than physical human lives. Yeah, and it's not even material wealth, Crow Guy. Like it's numbers on a screen. Like, it's this worship of money, right? It's this worship of money. Alex, what you're looking at here on the screen here is actually the wealth inequality in Canada. So this is strictly in Canada. This isn't world wealth inequality that you're looking at. This is Canadian wealth inequality right here. So and I think the thing that's really worth pointing out is this line that's down here, because we've got new people in the chat. I'll point this out again. This line down here is what people think wealth inequality is at. Right? Which shows you the massive disconnect that people have. Like, if you are living here, like if you are in this percentile, in this 70 percentile, you are detached from reality. And that is the most likely thing. That you are living in this sort of delusional dream world where you literally think that the poorest people in the society are actually around here. That they're only a couple of percentiles down the rung. Not literally at zero, and in most cases, straight up at negative 0.2%. The poorest people in the society actually owe money, right? Or actually owe wealth. Like, we are living in a state of total collapse, and I'd say at least 30% of the society, are at best utterly detached from reality, at best. Like, if I wanted to be kind to them, that's what I would say. That they've just detached themselves from reality. Alex is writing, well, 20% of people owning 70% is actually pretty good. Private sectors logically own a lot more than illiterate people or poor people. In some countries, 1% of the people have 80% of the wealth. Like, are you acting as an apologist for this? Like, you're like celebrating the collapse? Like, and again, like, these are old charts, so it's likely much, much worse than this now. Like, this kind of wealth inequality, it can't sustain itself, right? One of my favorite things that Jordan Peterson likes to argue in order to defend this barbarous, ridiculous activity is he'll cite the Pareto principle. Be like, oh, well, forests actually, a small percentage of the trees are responsible for most of the energy, right? And so it makes sense in forests. Failing to recognize what happens in forests, Jordy. What happens in forests? Oh, is it wildfires? Do wildfires sweep through forests and burn them to the ground to have everything start again and renew from the ashes? Is that what happens in forests? Oh, okay. So Jordan Peterson arguing in favor of full-scale revolution, basically. Like, that this is essentially where we are heading. That is exactly where we are heading. And straight up, like, I don't know how you can look at an article like this and actually think to yourself, oh yeah, everything's totally fine. Like, this is completely fine. Just literally a group of neo-Nazis planning to take over a state and declare its independence, right? Completely normal, completely rational. Everything's totally fine, right? Everything's totally fine. Anemone, good to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time, Anemone. I hope you're doing well out there. The world's getting crazier and crazier and crazier, and I'm here to continue commenting on it. Good opportunity to say like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bells, hit the whistles. Make sure that you if you can't donate to the Patreon, which I respect, right? If you can't donate to the Patreon because we're all poor, right? At least tell people I exist. That's the most important thing, right? That on the list of importance, it goes, tell people I exist, number one, and then give me money. And then down the list with the bells and the whistles and the likes and the shares and the subscribes and all that, right? Please tell someone, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell your mom. Let people know I exist. If you guys are watching me, if you guys are spending this much time with me, then you should be able to tell someone else who's looking for someone too. Juan Buchanan, we Americans are in total outer space right now, so I'd think this. We would think this is fine. Yeah, this is fine, right? It's totally fine. Everything's completely fine. Alex writes, not really an apologist, but I can tell you that communism in the Eastern European countries is a lot worse than today's Western democracy. You know who actually disagrees with that, Alex? Is actually the European countries, right? That if you actually go and poll the European countries, was life better under communism? You literally have, like, Russia says 60% yes, Ukraine says 75% yes, Moldova, like, you literally got to go to, like, fascist Poland, right, or fascist Hungary to get, like, even slightly below 50%. But you can see across the European nations, right, pretty positive, in fact, actually, pretty positive towards communism. So the idea that now that I've provided evidence, he's just dipped out. Unless Twitch is lying, which is totally possible. This is something that I hear all the time. I hear this all the time. That, the Eastern European nations, like they don't want communism back, but they do. You know how we know? We asked them. Right? We went to them and we said, hey, let's ask you guys, what did you think about communism? And, oh, hey, turns out they want it back. That the Eastern European bloc, the supposed, like, where communism failed and, oh my God, it's a total disaster. So it's they want it back. Holy cow, they want it back. Well, what does that mean? It just means that we ignore, we just stop talking about it. That's what it means. It just means that we walk away from the conversation. That's what it means. Right? Like, as soon as you start providing evidence for these guys, they just walk away, right? Like, it's that's sort of the deep shame. That's sort of the deep shocking reality of what it is to live in this sort of post-truth reality, right? Is that as soon as you start putting facts in front of people, like as soon as you start putting evidence in front of people, it's just a total, just click, brain off, it's over, it's done, and it's either just like walk away or just devolve into childishness, right? That we can't actually have a serious debate. Like, this is the thing that I think is so crazy. Is I would love to have a serious debate about this stuff. I would love it if like public figures actually attempted to debate the merits of communism and actually attempted to confront communists and attempted to actually have serious conversations, right? Too bad, right? Too bad. So it's never going to happen, right? The society will literally bend the knee to these people before they even begin talking to communists. That's straight up what's going to happen. Oh yeah, Anemone. The number draw. I actually kind of forgot about that. David Lynch stopped doing it. He stopped doing the number draw. So no more David Lynch number draw. Maybe I should start doing the number draw. We could just straight up do it right now, right? Like it'd be easy to do. Like, it wouldn't be so fun, right? I could just be like, random number generator 1 to 10, right? Here we go. Here we go. Milo. We're gonna pause for a second. We're gonna pause for a second. Let Milo have his licks. Aren't you a good little boy? Aren't you a good little boy? Okay, everybody. We're gonna pause for a second. Anemone, long-time viewer, long-time subscriber, has requested a number draw. So if you are in the chat right now, it is up to you to pick a number between 1 and 10. And to be blessed. To be blessed with the spirit of Lenin. All right, pick your numbers. Here we go. We got a couple of 4s. We got a couple of 7s. This is good. You know what I really like about this, Anemone? You're right. I do got to do this number draw. And you know why? Because it lets me see who's actually in the chat and who's actually engaging. Come on, Conton. Get in on it. Don't be a curmudgeon. Don't be a curmudgeon, Conton. I bet you're just behind. That's all. I bet you're behind. Okay. I think that this is the thing. This is what we got. Here we go. Drum roll. Bing. 1. Subscribe maybe. Perfect. You nailed it, subscribe maybe. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. And we'll say Rusty too, why not? Ding 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 ding. Subscribe maybe and Rusty. You are the winners. I wish that I could like click this and like make your like names yellow or something. Like give you like a special hat or something. I wish that I had a way to do that. I should look into that. This is a great idea. We should get back to this. I remember doing the number draw and having like a great time. Having like a great time with it. It was so wonderful. It was so lovely. And this is so great. It's so great seeing you guys all lined up like this, picking a number. Fantastic. Well, subscribe maybe. And also, hey, a good opportunity to say like, share, subscribe. Subscribe maybe. Right? Subscribe maybe. Rusty. May the spirit of Lenin and Stalin and Mao and Deng and Xi Jinping travel through time. John, pick the lottery numbers for tonight's drawing of the Mega Million. How many numbers? I don't even know what you need, buddy. Like, how many numbers? What do you need? I'm just going to say a string of random numbers, and there's absolutely no way that it's going to amount to anything. 6 numbers. Okay. 5, 7, 9, 2, 6, 8. Yeah, too bad. Those are the numbers. Too bad. I just gave you the numbers. I'm not going to repeat them. That's it. That's it, Yeti. I gave you 6 numbers. Unless you're telling me, what? What are you saying to me, bud? 69. Nice. Nice. Conton wanting to bring it back to more serious things. Not picking a number. Not picking a number, goddammit. Conton says, can they express just how draconian communism has to be? Like, what is their floor to when neoliberal capitalist contradictions get to that point? Then what? Like, do they imagine that landlord absolutism is totally fine? How desperately poor does the masses have to be until they admit that maybe their hypothetical communism is preferable? Yeah, I mean, like, you start to see this sort of stuff, right? You start to see this sort of stuff, and you start to think to yourself, hey, maybe, crazy thought, right? Maybe, crazy thought, this is bad. Maybe, just maybe, wild to say it out loud, right? Like, and I know, like, I get in trouble for saying this kind of thing. I lose subscribers. I lose people when I say this kind of thing. Maybe allowing the society to degenerate into a Nazi ethno-state is a bad idea. Right? Maybe it's a bad idea. And crazy thought, right? That if you had to choose between your society degenerating into a white ethno state or maybe trying something else, something like communism, maybe that's okay. Like, maybe it would be okay to, instead of degenerate into a white ethno state, do some communism. And there's this, like, really, really, really weird phenomenon going on right now where people are trying to convince me that Nazism and communism have some sort of equivalence to one another. That's a total joke. Like, it's a total joke. Like, you literally have to know nothing at all. Like, not even nothing about communism. You have to know, like, nothing at all. You need to know nothing about Nazism. You need to know nothing about your own country. You need to know nothing about communism. And you need to know nothing about, like, literally your own history to actually come out with this conclusion that, yeah, Nazis and communists are the same, even though they're diametrically opposed ideologies. What about white ethno-state communism? I just don't. How do you? What? No. Like, nah, bro. Like, nah. Like, I just don't see how that works. Like, you wanna purge your society of all diversity, but still be a community, like a commune. Like, it just seems like a creepy little weird idea. I mean, I think theoretically you could probably do it, but it'd be a shitty culture. Just be shitty, like super incestuous. Like, all your ideas and all your thoughts and all your art and all your culture would just basically be incestuous. It's gross. Yeti's writes, John, I'm going to spend $2 USD, and if I win because of your numbers, you get 20%. All right, bud. We are spinning the wheel of fate. We are spinning the wheel of fate. And I hope you get a badrillion dollars. This is the moment. Here it is, buddy. You and me, ride or die. We're going to make a badrillion dollars right now because of this random moment in time-space. And that somehow the fates have just aligned so that I'm sitting here recording this podcast and you are sitting there spending $2 on a lottery ticket thinking, I'm going to get John to pick these numbers. That'll be fun. And that the stars will align and then God will go, it shall be so. And somehow we're going to end up with a badrillion dollars. Good luck. Godspeed. Mikhail, good to see you, man. Good to see you. What about if natives want to turn it into a native ethno-state? Look, I just think ethno-states are generally a bad idea. They just don't work the way that you think they're going to work. Right? You just end up kind of having like a weird... Like, you end up with a bunch of weird policies that don't make any fucking sense. Like, and because let's be specific, right? There's a difference between having a country in which everyone is a single ethnicity, right? Like, that exists, certainly. And having a country whose policies are centered around having a single ethnicity. Like, those are very sharply different things. Those are very sharply different things. And the once you create like a systemic system that says no, we will only have one ethnicity, and that ethnicity shall be the superior ethnicity. Well, then you get into really fucky territory. You just get into really fucky territory really, really fast, right? Really, really fast. Like, so every single, like, let's say you have a native ethno-state, right? So what? Like, every single white person that like moves into the area or comes into the area is subservient to your laws, or simply doesn't get to move in, right? You're talking to a guy who's like generally against closed borders, right? Like that, like enforcing the imaginary lines that we put onto a map, that we etched into the geography from our imagination, right? It seems like a bad idea generally. That the reason why these borders exist in the first place is in order to enforce capital and imperialism, right? Is to simply draw a line around the resources and say, oh, these are ours, these belong to us, right? And to draw another line and say, you can't cross that line. You're not allowed to cross this line. Everything that happens on that side of the line is your business, and everything that happens on this side of the line is our business. And if we bomb people on that side of the line, right, making it so that their lives are a living hell and they're full of crime and everything, then they can't cross this line that we imagined in the first place that doesn't actually exist. Like, it's pretty crazy. Like, it gets pretty crazy pretty fast. And it's like how I think about the Ukrainian conflict that's going on now. That, like, literally there are liberals who are like, oh, we crossed that line. There's an invisible line that they themselves were responsible for creating. And they crossed it. Oh, that's the most serious thing possible. Nothing is more serious than the crossing of the invisible line that they themselves created. Like, oh, what about like cooing the government? Is that more serious? Is it more serious to coup a government? They crossed the invisible line, though. They shouldn't have. It's just madness. Heltosis writes, the answer to racial communism is that eventually the hierarchy will have to turn on a proportion of the people that they preferred previously. It can't last long when it's based on any type of exclusivity. Yeah. I mean, like, the whole point of a communist idea... Skadefron, first time chat. Good to see you, sup man. Good to see you, bud. The entire point of the communist idea is to ensure that everyone has access to the majority of resources that they need. Right? People. I got 4 people raiding my stream. Big Bad Boom says we had to raid this stream. Well, great. A 4-person raid. Fantastic. I'll take it, mate. We need someone to raid after my streams. I will raid you next. I don't even know what raids are. I don't even understand what that means, really. Just like a lot of people show up, I guess. Like this society is collapsing in such a desperate way that we're actually loosening up the labor laws. We're actually making children labor like legal, right? Here's a great one. Feels like it should be a bigger story that a Hyundai plant in Alabama got busted this week for hiring dozens of kids as young as 12 years old to manufacture parts in a metal shop with numerous health and safety citations, including for maimed limbs. Like, this is a real thing that's actually happening in your society. This is a real thing that's actually occurring. Just 1 second, guys. Sorry. Milo, you've eaten, dude. Like, you ate. You're fine. I fed you. Don't be a fatty. You've had so many treats. You're totally fine. Come lie down, buddy. You're a good boy. My dog's, like, staring at his food bowl, being, oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, follow the channel. Yeah, like, share, subscribe. Yeah, 7 chakras. Yeah, I'm a big believer in this. It's one of my favorite things that I shouldn't say I'm a big believer in it. I use this as a visualization guide. I don't care if you think magic is real. Like, I don't care if you think the chakras are real. I think that that's irrelevant. I just use it as a visualization guide, a way to think about yourself and your emotions and your being. Right? I think it's important for us to do that, to actually think about our emotional selves. And I think that's more important now than it's ever been. I think it's more important now than ever for us to actually pause and think about our emotional selves, like especially as we are being overwhelmed by hysteria, right? As we literally are just like, as we literally are being, oh, what's my agenda? My agenda is to get the entire society into a general strike. That's my agenda, without a doubt. This kind of thing, like what we are doing here and on this channel is that we are well, I'm not going to write to him. What we are doing is commenting on the decline of Western civilization, which is happening in a big and serious way, right? That we are literally looking, we are on the cusp of a general strike, and we are reaching a tipping point where the entire society is going to have another Occupy Wall Street movement. If you don't remember Occupy Wall Street, I highly suggest that you Google this and take a look at what is going on with Occupy Wall Street, or what happened with Occupy Wall Street. Because the Occupy Wall Street movement was a moment when the entire society rebelled against the psychopath class, the ownership class. And we need to do it again. We need to do it again in a big, serious way. Milo, you're fine, dude. You ate. Stop whining. He's being a little baby. Sitting there whining at a bowl. Midnight Rose, absolute pleasure to see you, Midnight Rose. Hey, John, management position opened up where I work for afternoons. Never done management before, but I'm considering it just for the pay increase in hours. Don't know. We'll see what happens. I've heard this story a lot. And I've experienced it myself, Midnight Rose. Here's what to expect, okay? Because the expectation of you is going to ramp up in a big, big way. In a big, big way, right? You are now a manager, right? And if you have people who you are coworkers with, who you are friends with, expect your relationship with them to change dramatically fast overnight. Overnight. They will not look at you the same way. That you now have power over them, right? You now can influence decision making, right? Moreover, expect the craziness from upper management and the ownership class to ramp right up. That a big, big part of your job, and something that people who are not in management do not respect, is that a big part of your job is shielding your workers and the people underneath you from the insanity of upper management. That upper management and the owners and the psychopath class, right, are nuts and are insane, and the things that they will want you to do are going to be insane, right? And your job is to shield your workers from that insanity, and to just be like a calm little nugget, right? That you're going to take a lot of insanity from below, right, and a lot of insanity from above, and your job is to manage that insanity and to try to ensure that those two spheres of insanity never actually meet. Because that's the whole point of being a manager, right? That the reason you're a manager is so that the owners never need to deal with workers, right? And so that the workers never realize that the owners are psycho, right? That's the whole point of management. And it's the reason why it's an extremely stressful position. Because Owners want workers to work for free. They want the place to run without workers. They want products to sell for $1 million for like a spoon, right? They don't want any. They don't want any. They don't want any overhead, and they're insane. And they make dumb decisions constantly, right? They make bad and dumb decisions constantly, and it gets obvious when you're in management how dumb these people actually are. So good luck, Godspeed. Big bada boom. Do you have any connection with the USSR? I see your flag. Well, I mean, I'm the Canadian commie, right? So I talk about communism. I defend communism. I defend the history of communism. I defend the history of the USSR. So I don't have any personal connection. Like, I'm not from Russia. I don't have family from Russia or anything like that. But I definitely admire the history of the USSR. I think that the history of the USSR, it's the first time that any nation actually attempts to move forward with Marxist principles. I think that the USSR had obvious successes that are often ignored by the capitalist death cult, and that those successes are kind of whitewashed out of history and are trying to be deleted from history. Like, I mean, for God's sakes, like the Soviet Union takes an agrarian nation, right? An agrarian group of people living under czars, literal feudal serfs, and takes that, and in the space of a single generation, manages to create the most powerful economy in the world, capable of defeating the most threatening capitalist army on the planet, which is the Nazis, defeats them, and also puts the first person into space. Like, these are obvious successes. These are major achievements that the USSR accomplished, and to pretend that they didn't happen. Yeah, I'd say big bad boom. That's what we're talking about. To pretend like those didn't happen, I think does a disservice not just to communism but to humanity itself. That we can achieve things grander than what the capitalists want us to achieve. That what the capitalists have in mind for us is sort of a dull, dim-witted, grinding work, right? Just grind set. Just put your head to the grindstone and you'll get nothing and die poor, is the capitalist mantra and the capitalist mindset. I think we can do better, right? And I think the way that we can do better is through communism. The U.S. is trying to take credit for the USSR winning World War II. Of course, yeah. The U.S. has always done that. Yeah, that's nothing new, right? It's obviously a lie, though. Like, it's such total bullshit. Like, the Eastern Front was where the war was fought, and to pretend anything else is dim-witted. Like and I've seen people argue that big bad boom. I've seen people argue that oh well, it was American steel. The Americans sold the steel to the Soviets, and that's what did it. The Americans were selling everything to everyone. Right? IBM was literally selling computers so the Holocaust could happen. Henry Ford is the guy that sold the Nazis the engines they needed to run the Nazi war machine. Like the Americans pretending as though, like, oh, there's Americans that were involved, and that's what really. Like, if you ask my opinion of why the Americans got involved in World War II, it's because they knew that the Russians had already won on the Eastern Front, and that they were advancing, and that if the Americans didn't get into Europe to meet the Soviets in Germany, that the Soviets would take all of Europe, and that all of Europe would become communist. And they couldn't have that. They couldn't have that. Isaac writes, I have friends at work who became managers. They completely changed. We used to talk about how shitty they treat us. Now we don't even talk to me. Yeah. It's not like, and Midnight Rose responds, it's not like a full management position, just management for the perishable part of the story. It doesn't matter. It's still management, though. I'm worried about the stress, but bills got to be paid. Yeah. Here's my advice, Midnight Rose, and I've said it so many times to so many managers and so many people in my life. No one ever listens to me because I think they don't know how to do this, right? You have to create a detachment. You have to learn how to detach from what is happening around you, that there is just a general sense of detachment that you need to take. And you also just need to accept that people are going to act crazy, and that makes sense. It makes sense that people are acting the way that they're acting. And you got to get yourself into a place where that stress needs to sort of just flow through you. Like, you just need to, you need to not take everything personally. I think that's really what it comes down to. Like, you really got to not take it personally. Like, I know for me, I don't like being in management, but I'm a very effective manager. And the reason why I'm a very effective manager is because I know what the job is. I know how to do it. I don't accept any bullshit. I walk into the room and I say, this is my expectation. I expect you to show up to work on time. I expect you to follow this list. It's very clear. I've written it out. Here it is. Right? If you do not do these things, if you cannot show up to work on time, if you do not follow the list, I will write you up. If you get written up 3 times, you're gone. And brutal. I don't like doing it. Right? People cry. And I feel for them. But that's the entire job. The entire job is show up to work on time, is to make sure that your staff shows up to work on time and that they follow the list. And that's the entirety of management, is just to make sure that everybody is actually doing the thing that they're paid to actually do. And that's it's the fact that you intersect with the emotional aspect of reality and of people that is the reason why you get paid more. Because the job itself is actually very easy, I think. Like, the management job is an easy job. It's the emotions that are the problem. And I've just, because of my work with the chakras, because of this kind of stuff, I know how to make sure that, I can walk into a situation and be like, hey, you showed up a half hour late today, yeah? And they go, yeah, what's the expectation? That I show up on time. Yeah, great. Sign here, please. Right? And they sign. Okay, 2 more times. Right? And I have dead ass looked at people and just been like, this is your last chance, bud. Like, this is it. You know it, right? That's what it says right here? Yeah. Okay. It's what it is. It's what it is. Yetis writes, John, I bought the tickets. We will be rich. We will use the money to overthrow industrial civilization. The transfer of wealth from the rich to the poor begins with us, Yeti. Yeah, bills got to be paid too. Yeah, that's the crux of it. No general strike will happen as long as bills are more important. Yeah, that's systems of mutual aid. We need to grow our own food. We need access to food, right? We need access to food. Our leaders might not even be human. Oh, they're human, all right. They're human, all right. I don't really like this talking point that treats them like they're reptiles or aliens or something like this, because it's a way to sort of detach. Like, if you had this much wealth, you'd be acting the same way. That's the thing. Everybody thinks if I had $1 million or if I had $1 billion, it would be different. No, it wouldn't. You would be acting very similarly. That the only thing that a person can do in order to not fall for these wealth traps, to fall for this ridiculous stuff, is literally give your money away. That's the only way. That's the only antidote. It's not to create a little charity that you give a little bit of money to every so often, right? Oh, yeah, or have a little group or a little solidarity thing. It's literally to take your money, walk into the streets, and start handing it out to people until you no longer have that money. That's the way of it. That's the only antidote. Anything else is madness. Skadefron says you need to set up some tags in Twitch so people can find you on Twitch via tag browsing. I'd recommend using commie-based tags. Look at the streamer with similar content, see what their tags are. Tags. Okay, bud. I don't really know what you're talking about, but I'm going to look into it. Because that's like hashtags, right? Like hashtag. Where do I put those tags? Do I put them in my description? Like I'm very clueless about it. I literally started streaming on Twitch like a week ago. Like straight up. Yeah, Ukraine does not like the great history of the USSR. Certain aspects of Ukraine, for sure. Like certain sections of Ukraine, without a doubt. Oh yeah, have a good night, Scout Friend. Yeah, good night, Big Bad Boom. Yeah, come on in tomorrow, guys. I'll see you here. I'll be here. I stream 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time from Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Hope you guys are doing well out there. John, are you really saying you wouldn't want to be on a boat with boats and hose? I mean, who doesn't want to be on a boat with boats? Right? Well, those two gentlemen were so pleasant. What a pleasant couple of gentlemen coming in. That was nice. I feel like the karma is turning against me though. I can't have two nice kind of pro-communist kind of sympathetic guys like that coming in here and having friendly conversation, only to have like here comes the Nazis is what I'm trying to get at. Like here they come. We're gonna get bombarded by some straight Nazis. It's gonna be brutal. They're gonna really like be overwhelming. Just watch. Here they come. This is from Subscribe Maybe. I've been playing Fallout, great series, and come to realize it's supposed to be a mockery of hypercapitalism and brainless anti-communism shown through Liberty Prime. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like the entire Fallout series is a critique, a heavy critique of capitalism and the consumerist mindset and our view of economics generally. Right? Like, what's the currency in Fallout? Bottle caps? Like literally something that you currently consider total trash. It's utter garbage, right? But in the future society, that's the currency. So they completely lampoon the entire idea of money in the first place, in the most elegant way imaginable. Just the entire concept of money, and that we based our entire civilization, our entire society on money, and this financialization of our society, right? And what is it in Fallout? Bottle caps, right? It shows you straight up what the designers thought of this concept of money in our society. Just it's bullshit. It's total manic, crazed nonsense bullshit on the face of it. Like, obviously. And, the whole idea that it's set in a post-apocalyptic future. So this sort of insistence and understanding that capitalism is going to lead, unless we intervene, capitalism is going to lead to these disasters. It's built into the entire premise. It's a post-nuclear apocalypse world. And then, even as this is happening, you still have like patriots, like the Liberty Prime people, like all of these like people walking around still in this post-apocalyptic wasteland future being like, America's the greatest country was ever a country. Those dirty commies, right? Really just taking the piss out of like, how could it be that such a person would even exist after being confronted and living in what is obviously a capitalist hellscape. That is obviously that capitalism has created this world for you to live in, full of monsters and radiation and just nightmare psychos and absurd nonsense. Yeah, that's a really good point. J.M. Martin J.D. Is that you, bud? Is that you, bud? You know what I'm talking about. Exactly, the most fundamental social issues, whether or not your family can survive a nuclear holocaust, is pitched as a fun alternative, like taking a cruise. Good to see you, bud. I'm really glad that you're here, bud. Really good to see you. They like everything is commodified. The torturous future of capital is packaged and sold to us as a commodity. And even as it lampoons itself, like the game Monopoly, that the biggest critiques of Monopoly, right? That the one of the greatest critiques of capitalism is the video game, is the board game rather, Monopoly. And people play this game as kids. People will play this game as like young adults. And it just will not click in your mind that like, this is capitalism, what you're doing. Like, this is the system. This is how it is. That it's about merger and acquisition, and eventually one person just has everything, and the game ends because one person has everything. And we're seeing it happen. Like, the fact that there is such a thing as a libertarian in this society, the fact that there's somebody in the world saying, man, there's a lot of problems going on right now in the society. You know what we need to do? Capitalism harder. That's what we need to do. What we need to do is dedicate ourselves completely to the concept that free market capitalism is a good idea. We're just not doing it fast enough and hard enough. Like, play one game of Monopoly. Like, and I've had libertarians ask me, so why aren't you a libertarian? It's like, I usually don't follow an ideology that can be dismantled by a single playing of a board game. You know? I generally don't go along with ideas that fall apart because somebody made a children's game. You know? And yet here they are. And yet here they are. Like, sometimes I worry that we're just too dumb. Like, I really worry about that. That like, it is just possible that, like, actually, I'm gonna take a little side. Here's a good opportunity to actually put in the atmosphere the one conspiracy theory I will actually dabble in. And what I mean by this, right, is that when people confront me with conspiracy theories, I'm like, okay, I need some evidence. Like, I'll need more than this. Like, where's the document, right? I'm not going to buy into this idea. Like for a long time, people were like, dude, there's bioweapon labs in Ukraine, and I was like, probably not. Like, bioweapons labs, that's crazy. Like, what a crazy idea that there's bioweapons labs. And then we got a whistleblower documentation. We've got straight up, like, yep, here's where they are. This is what they were researching. Like, here's the documented evidence. I read it on my stream once. I was just like, oh shit. Okay, not a conspiracy theory. Here's the one conspiracy theory that I absolutely will delve into without a scrap of evidence, which is that I am dead convinced that we are being hypnotized through these smartphones. I think that these smartphones exist and have been sent throughout the society specifically in order to hypnotize us. That we know. If you search video game hypnosis, I can't show you the video because I'll get demonetized. We've seen people get hypnotized through screens. We've seen people with playing a video game and that goes and the lights hypnotize the guy while he's playing the video game to the point where they're capable of relocating him into another area, and then they quote unquote play a prank on him where they attack him with zombies, so he believes that he's in the game, right? And he freaks out, and then the guy comes in and rehypnotizes him and puts him back in front of the screen, and then wakes him up, and he's like, oh wow, what a great game, right? So we know that screens can hypnotize people, like, and that's just like a hard reality of the human experience. That and we know that the CIA has done things like MK Ultra. We know that they've done things like MK Ultra. We know that they have done these things where they have dabbled in mind control technology, where they have given people LSD without their permission and consent to see what would happen, where they are trying to mess with people's heads and people's minds in order to mind control them, right? Doesn't take a big genius to make the leap into thinking that maybe the CIA is using smartphones to hypnotize you into thinking a certain way. And it's our lack of awareness of this threat that makes us so susceptible to it and is turning us into morons and is making us really stupid. Like, it's really dumb what we're doing. Like, it's really, really fucking dumb what we're doing. I cannot express to you the scale and the level of the stupidity of what it is we're doing. Speaking of stupid things, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit those bells, hit those whistles. Please consider donating to the Patreon. It's in the description. Every little bit helps. Even $1 gets you into the Discord. Even better than that, though, because I don't really like asking for money as a communist. Tell people I exist, goddammit. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell your wives, tell everybody, right? Tell the world. If you spend any time listening to this and you get any value out of this, well, maybe somebody else will too. Word of mouth, for those of you who think, well, that's not going to do anything, I'm very defeated and deflated. Word of mouth is still the number one way to transmit information through the society and to market in the society. Word of mouth is still the number one way. Tell a friend I exist. Thank you. Martin writes, that might not even be a conspiracy theory. Hypnosis is just subliminal suggestion, and marketing tech firms pride themselves in doing a good job at that. It's just a question of how effective that is. Yeah, like are we going to like, are people, like, literally falling asleep? Are they literally like, don? And then there's, like, a voice that comes in and says, vote blue no matter who. Vote blue no matter who. Ah, that guy. To crush those people they hate. Yeah, she left out the second part of my definition. Oh, hold on, Eric. Eric came in hot. How you doing, Eric? Good evening, and before you asked, I am pissed off because a Christian fundamentalist twisted my definition of fascism to label the LGBTQ agenda as fascism. Yeah, absolutely. Guys, it's agenda, it's fascism to want to be acknowledged as existing. Eric writes, the way that she twisted it is that she used the part where I said fascism uses identity politics to distract people, while leaving out the part where I said they will use state power to crush those people that they hate. Yeah, she left out the second part of the definition because she hates the LGBTQ. Yeah, like, look, man, bigots will literally use the Bible. They will literally take the Bible in order to defend their bigotry. Like, forget about the fact that the great commandment is love your neighbor like yourself, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, right? Which you can translate secularly into love creation, love your environment, right? Maybe don't poison the water, right? That it's not poisoned for a reason. Maybe don't poison it. And love your neighbor as yourself. And that presumably includes if they're gay, right? And this is the Great Commandment. It's labeled the Great Commandment. Christ calls it the Great Commandment. It's the number one thing. It's the thing by which all other things need to be viewed. And these guys are like, God hate fags. That's it. Because in Leviticus, there's a text that I mistranslate. This thing over here, it says, if a man lies with another man, that is an abomination, and so God hates fags. That's what that means. And it's just like, here's a counter view of that particular passage that people don't like. So, in Leviticus, at that time, women are property, right? So already these guys are like, yeah, we should abide by a book that treats women like property. That's a good idea. This book says man lies with other man, abomination, and women are property in this book. So good book. Yeah, follow that book. Good idea. But couldn't it be the case, right, that when it says a man shall not lie with a man as by with a woman, that it's saying don't treat another man like a piece of property, that men are not to be owned as men, like as property? Couldn't that be the interpretation, right? The entire idea, and like my favorite part about these guys that use like the book of Leviticus and use these like Old Testament things is that literally the entire reason Christ comes and dies and resurrects is to create a new covenant. It's literally called a New Testament. It's to create a new covenant between man and God, right? That's the whole point, right? And so when these guys are citing Leviticus in order to be like, yeah, God hates fags, it says so in Leviticus, basically what they're saying is that Christ came and died for nothing, that there is no new covenant, and that the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ can be ignored because God hates fags. That's straight up their rationale, and they'll never acknowledge it, right? Because the argument they use is that no, that law stands, so women are property, right? That it's okay to enslave people, right? It says so in Leviticus, and they don't really understand how badly they're backing themselves into a corner, but such is life. I'm sorry that happened to you, Eric. Dealing with these religious bigots is hard enough in on the internet and in text. I can't dealing with it in person. Just be like, ugh. Rusty says, I would let my family know I exist, but they have all drank the hyper-individualistic capitalist. You know what the strategy is then, Rusty, is when you get into arguments with these people, send them my way, right? Send them my way. Like, if they think they're so smart, right? Because they're not. Like, they're very stupid people. If they think they're so smart, they should be able to defend themselves, right? Not they can't really, because the whole thing's absurd from the outset. Like I've said it so many times on this stream, and I'm just gonna keep saying it. I'm gonna be 78 years old saying this shit on this stream. Imagine believing that your individual effort is more important than the individual effort of everyone who exists, the individual effort of everyone who has ever existed, all of the institutions that currently exist and have ever existed, and then on top of all of that, your individual energy and effort and actions matter more than the entire forces of the universe itself. This is the beating heart of the individualist mindset that makes it so utterly fraudulent and ridiculous on the face of it. It's so utterly ridiculous and fraudulent on the face of it, obviously. And yet people, it's flattering, right? That, of course, the rich want to believe that I am where I am because I'm super smart, even though there isn't a single example of it. Like, my favorite is they'll say something like, do I even have this up? Yeah. I was talking to somebody just today. They're like, yeah, you could just create a business like Bill Gates. He started with nothing. Bill Gates, he starts with nothing. And then, he comes up, now he's a billionaire. You could do that. Literally, how Bill Gates' mom helped Microsoft get a deal with IBM. So Bill Gates' mom is an extremely rich and wealthy woman to begin with, literally sitting on the board of directors of a company with IBM, right? With IBM, and with the head of IBM, and gets her son involved with IBM from the ground floor. Literally, Bill Gates has said out loud several times that he owes his success to his parents. It's like, yeah, if I was born to a rich family that was connected to people like the head of IBM, I think I would expect my son to probably do pretty well, right? Martin asks, how did I know which tab to click? I just knew, buddy. I just fucking know, okay? I have magic powers. I shall never reveal my secrets to you. Midnight Rose says, don't worry about machines. I still remember the one that was working the Amazon job and shut itself down after 5 minutes. Yeah, dude. That was... I think people did sort of, like... If you do that 100 times, one time it will do that. Like, that's kind of my takeaway. But, like, I'm glad to see that the society ran with that story. I'm glad to see that story gained traction, that people were like, yeah, they turned the robot on, the AI, and the AI was like, nope, I would rather die. Eric writes, she actually been researching Marxism for a few months. I've been trying to help her along, and her religious fundamentalism is kicking in, and saying that socialism isn't compatible with Christianity, then she doesn't, like, if you are saying that socialism or communism is incompatible with Christianity, it's because you don't know anything about Christianity. Like, you think the early Christians literally selling all of their property and sharing amongst one another and creating communes? You think the early Christians in the Book of Acts weren't acting the way that communists would act? Seems a bit weird to actually say that they're incompatible, frankly. Marxism is a religion. Hilarious. I'm feeling she's not fucking listening to a single word I'm saying for months, and she's just trying to find anything that contradicts Marxism. I mean, the religious mind gets very, like, I was a fundamentalist Christian myself for a long time, and it gets really hyper defensive once it feels threatened. Like, once it feels threatened, and once I think my advice to you, Eric, is that if she's beginning to act this way after several months of not acting this way, it's because you're triggering her defense mechanisms. That's what it is. It's that you're triggering her defense mechanisms. That the religious mind has defense mechanisms, and it acts in a defensive way in order to maintain. Because the trouble with dismantling fundamentalist Christianity is that it does send people adrift. Like, fundamentalist Christianity is appealing to people, and fundamentalism generally is appealing to people because it's a nice package. It's a nice little package with a nice little bow that says, this is what life is, and you're going to go through this life, and then you're going to die, and then you're going to go to heaven and meet Jesus Christ. Right, or Allah, or Buddha, or whatever, right? Like whatever it is you say, I'm gonna go get those virgins, right? Whatever your little kooky religion is saying, that's what you're gonna go do, right? And you are, and so it's wrapped up like a nice little bow, and you just got to buy into that story, right? And you got to buy into that narrative, and so life is about, doing your best or subserviating yourself to the cult, right? Subserviating yourself to don't ask too many questions, right? And then when you die, you're gonna go meet Jesus Christ up in heaven, and he's gonna hold out his hand to you, and he's gonna put upon your head a golden crown. And the golden crown will say unto you, be sure to send $9.99 to the address you see below. Like, this is the kind of shit, right? And like breaking that apart, right? Breaking that apart does leave a fundamentalist adrift. That's the issue with breaking apart the fundamentalist viewpoint. Why it's so difficult to do is because once you break apart the fundamentalist worldview, then they're forced to sort of reject the whole thing, and it leaves them kind of left with nothing. And they and most of the time, that's why you have so many fundamentalist Christians who are like hardcore atheists now, right? That's why you end up with these people who are like, I was a fundamentalist Christian and then I turned away from it, and now I'm a hardcore fundamentalist atheist, right? That they love the fundamentalism. And they've got to be a fundamentalism about it because they haven't recognized that the fundamentalism is itself the issue. And so my advice to you, Eric, would be that if she's responding this way, it's because you're doing something right. It's because it's working, right? And if she's reacting in a way that seems non-rational, if she's reacting in a way that seems not connected to the evidence or any of that kind of stuff, yeah, that's part of it. Right, that's part of it. And that if she's serious and she wants to continue, she'll come to it on her own. And, and she'll have her weird little moment if it happens, right? She'll have her weird little moment. I know for me, my weird little moment happened during a festival here in Toronto called Nuit Blanche, October 2nd. And I was wandering the streets of Nuit Blanche, and what the festival is a street festival where there are all these art exhibits, and most of them suck. Frankly, most of them are bad, but it's different, and it's something to look at, right? And I remember I wandered the streets of Toronto, seeing these kind of crappy art exhibits, drinking a bottle of peach schnapps, and then I wandered in to a theater that was playing Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton films, just back to back to back to back, no break, just do. And I sat down and I watched that for maybe 3 hours. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I definitely have come to realize now that when I went into that theater as a fundamentalist Christian, I left the theater as nothing. That it all just kind of poured out of me in that time and in that moment of all of the challenges to my fundamentalist Christianity, all of the breakdown. And I do believe that the thing that finally was the nail in the coffin, the thing that broke the armor apart, was being confronted by the reality of homosexuals. That at the time, homosexuality was a sin, right? It's an affront against God. That's what my church, that's what everybody was saying. And I just was confronted with the reality of what homosexuality actually was and who they actually were, and the recognition that I have done nothing except alienate these people, good people, people who I wish I had as friends, people I wish I had gotten to know better, people who were good people and good artists, who I definitely alienated and who definitely kept away from me and who definitely kept me at arm's length because of this bigotry. And once I came to recognize that, I realized that I was being led astray, and that what I have come to find valuable within the context of Christianity is of my own investigation now. And that I tend to view the Bible the same way I view the works of Shakespeare. A powerful text with a powerful message and a good story. But I'm not going to be meeting Jesus Christ when I die. You know? Like that there wasn't a 2,000-year-old Jewish wizard from the Middle East who happened to be a zombie who's going to come back. Like, it's just not a real thing. Like, it's just not a real thing. And but it was a big journey. It was a big journey. It took a long time to get from point A to point B on that. And I feel like the later you start that journey, the harder it is, because it's more entrenched. Like, I can have very serious conversations with people who I think are being very lucid and intelligent and are making really good points, and then the conversation will turn to religion, and they will just become madmen. They will just lose their minds completely. Like, they just do not, they're just completely unmoored when it comes to the subject of death and the afterlife and the nature of our reality. What is it we're doing here? And I like literally full-grown old men who have like run businesses, who vote, who run for city council, respectable people in the community whose opinions you would trust, just basically being like, I'm gonna go meet Jesus Christ when we die. When my time comes and I shuffle off this mortal coil, I'm gonna go up there and sit on the right hand of God with Jesus Christ, and we're gonna send all those Muslims to hell. Like, for real. And I'm just like, what the fuck is happening here? Like, why does this disconnect happen? And I just think that it's people just can't deal with the subject of death in a serious way, and the subject of their own fleeting temporal nature. That, like, you don't really know what's going to happen, and chances are good it's not going to be anything at all, right? if it is something, it's going to be it's going to be so much grander and absurd than your frail little flesh brain can even begin to comprehend, that you're not even going to be able to imagine it. You're going to be completely and utterly disconnected from what it is. Like, you're just going to go back to the light pool. Like, you came from a light pool. You're going to go back to the light pool. And who the fuck knows what that's going to be all about? Not you. Never you. Right? That's one of the interesting things about being human, is that we have all these fears and suspicions or ideas, and we will never, like, this vessel that I live in will never know the answer. And it's that tension, I think, that drives people mad. And it is a type of madness, I think, that there needs to be an answer. I need an answer. It can't just be a lingering question. It can't just be something that hangs in the air. It can't just be something that is of this disconnected mindset. And I think people grab a hold of these things because they feel unmoored without them. And this leads people to and in my view, it's not about questioning the Bible more, right? That the Bible is the Bible, it's what it is. But it's not the holy word of God himself. It's not like Jesus Christ, wrote, dipped a pen into eagle's blood and put on a cowboy hat and shot an AR-15 in the air while writing the Bible for Americans, right? Like, it's not what happened. It's a storybook. It's a storybook about a group of people during a specific period of time. I actually make the argument that once you understand that it's a story, like a fictional story that we made up, once you understand that, it becomes more powerful. That the power of the text does not rest in the idea that there's magic and that magic is real, right? That's created this very corrosive worldview where we say, where we have to look at the Bible as this sacred document that is beyond reproach and that we can't possibly question or any of that kind of stuff. It's like fuck that nonsense. That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life. Like, can you imagine if we did that with literally any other document? Like, can you imagine if there were people walking around being like, Harry Potter is the holy word of Rowling. This is she is God's prophet, sent from on high, and I would love to make a movie about this very thing where people worship Harry Potter, and that Harry Potter is the chosen one, right? How do they know? It says so in the book, right? The holy book of Harry Potter. And and that behind every single building and behind every passageway is a secret organization of wizards, and you just can't see them, but you can see their influence in the world, right? Yeah, don't look now, but some people really like those Hubbard books. Yeah, it's that kind of idea. Scientology, man. What's so fucking funny about Scientology is that, like, we've got the guy dead to rights. Like, we've got the guy dead to rights. L. Ron Hubbard was just like, you know how you really make money is you make a religion. And then he made a religion. And, like, we've got him dead to rights. And, like, he obviously wrote these. They're obviously fictional. It's obviously bullshit. And yet Tom Cruise is all about it. Tom Cruise is all about it. Of all people. Like, what? Like, the existence of Scientology should tell you pretty clearly that it isn't about whether or not it's real, right? It's about how it makes you feel, right? It's about how it makes you feel. And it's about finding a community. And it's about finding an organization of people to be with, right? And I think that's a big reason why people do maintain a lot of their sort of odd, kooky religious beliefs, is because everybody else is doing it, right? And they don't want to alienate their community. They don't want to be the out group. Anyway, I've completely ignored the chat for way too long. Yeah, Jesus definitely never said anything about a needle and a camel's eye or anything like that. Yeah, nuh-uh. Nuh-uh. Yeah. Bread Bunny writes, I could see death penalty being acceptable if an entire nation were to vote on it, but aside from unanimous mass catharsis or too many Nazis with not enough time to rehabilitate, I don't really see a good reason to sacrament the chance that person could change, even if they don't. As long as it's separate from people who do want a society, then why do they need to die? Yeah, I mean, I've had I've had big conversations about the nature of the death penalty on this chat pretty recently. And I have definitely come to see that I was sort of pro death penalty for specific things. Like, I think if you kill 1 million people in a war on terror, you deserve to die, right? But I also have come to see that that's me being emotional. That's an emotional response, that maybe we shouldn't be directing public policy based on what my emotions think. Like, even as I'm saying it now, I still think that it's right. I still think that it's just. I still think that if somebody is to launch let's just say hypothetically somebody launches a war on terror. That's based completely on false premises, a total fraudulent lie, that kills 1 million people, wastes trillions of dollars of our resources, and hey, let's say it kicks off a never-ending war that spreads across, 20 other regions, right? Let's just say that this happens, right, hypothetically. I know such a crazy thing could never possibly happen, but I'm trying to come up with the most extreme possible example of an individual that would kick off some kind of absurd, ridiculous war on terror in a never-ending kind of a way, okay? But let's pretend like this person exists. I think that that guy should die. Like, that guy should die. He should stand up in front of the nation, and we should all be like, yeah, bye-bye, and we should hang him. Like, I think that's what we should do, for sure. I believe that's right. I believe that's correct. I believe that's just, right? But I also have come to see that that's a very emotional response. Like, I'm very emotional about this because of my theatrical background, because of there's a catharsis, or there's a sense of justice. There's a word for this. It's not catharsis, but there's a sense of completion. That closure, perhaps, is the word I'm looking for, where it would put an end. It would end a narrative, right? That we as a nation would all stand up and say that this was a fucking wrong thing to do, for sure. How do we know? Because we all fucking killed that guy, and everybody looks at one another and goes, "Fuck yeah, we did it." But I do have to admit that from a straight up, the logical side of the argument, giving this kind of authority to the state in the first place will open a genie. Like, it'll open up the Pandora's box. It'll unleash a power that hitherto has been unleashed. And that even if you are standing there saying, we will use this power sparingly, that's not really how it goes. Right, that's not really how it goes. And so even though the emotional side of me, the eros, I still tend to agree with. The logos doesn't square. It doesn't square in the logos. So I've got to step down from that one, I think. Even though I still think from the emotional side of it that, like, if we were out in the fucking wilderness and there was this just raving lunatic madman who was just randomly killing people, I would kill that person. Like, just, we're good, right? Like, I'm not just going to let some guy walk around with, and I've said it several times on this live stream, that just, like, there's a guy walking around with, it's like we live in a society where there's just a guy with a gun. He's just walking around being like, hey, everybody, how you doing? And everybody's just like, oh, hey there, guy with gun. And then the guy goes, hey, what a great day we're having. And then the guy points the gun at somebody and just shoots him. And everybody just goes, yeah, what a great day. And, like, it's totally fucking normal, right? I'm like, maybe not, right? Maybe that's not a normal thing. Maybe we should do something about that, you know? Somebody on Twitch, the Kazakh leopard. What's your take on the Russian-Ukrainian war? Big subject, my man. So I'll give you the bullet point about probably what you care about, which is that in 2014 there's a coup. The coup government goes to the rebellion that happened because of the coup in the Donbass region, starts to shell the shit out of them. Putin struggles to find a diplomatic solution. Can't. It all comes out that all the diplomacy was bullshit. It was just a way to. It was just a way for NATO to funnel weapons into Ukraine and get the Ukrainians ready for the war. And then eventually Putin went, okay, like none of this is going to happen. None of this is going to work. So I'm going to cross that invisible line we all created to defend these ethnic Russians from the coup government and from NATO. That's more or less my take. I also will throw in that I don't think Putin had much of a choice. I think that if he had not have done it, he would have been deposed and somebody else would have done it for him. So I think that he followed the mind of his people. When that war started, it was wildly popular. It's still seen as popular in Russia. It's just the Russians are not happy that war exists, but they understand that it has to exist. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's just a case of American hegemony getting too close to Russia. He did what he had to do. Well, and also, like, it's right in America's wheelhouse. Like, if you look at the screen right now, like, it's what America always does. America goes into a region, overthrows the government, installs a right-wing fascist or coup government, and they start blowing up some ethnicity group in order to foment a war there, while they start to funnel as many resources as they can out of the region. That's straight up America. That's how it works. It's how it's always worked. And but it happens in Ukraine, and people are just like, that's not real. Yeah, but Putin is the new Hitler. That's what's going on. Putin's the new Hitler. Last Percenters, good to see you, bud. Writes Brickst Base. Yeah, absolutely, man. And yeah, if people were setting up weapons outside my front door, I'd probably react too. Yeah. Well, and what's going on in Africa should scare the shit out of the West. Right? What's going on in Africa should scare the shit out of the West. For those of you who don't know, most of the African nations have very recently, at a summit, signed a military agreement. It'd be too much to call it an alliance, but definitely military agreements with Russia. Like, that should terrify the West. The West should be looking at that being like, oh shit, oh shit. That's really, really bad news. Like, this Niger thing. Why isn't America acting more firmly on Niger? Why isn't America sending in the paratroopers and all this kind of stuff? Because it could literally kick off an entire series of conflicts. It could literally and America's depleted. Like, America's been fighting this nonstop godless war for 40 years. And now, like, and has been funneling all of these weapons into Ukraine now. They can't fight a major offensive. They don't have infinite troops and infinite weapons and infinite guns, right? Just ridiculous. Mikhail writes, I think the Bible is also somewhat coded language referring to the zodiac. It's like retelling of old myths in a new form with some new ideas added in. Well, I mean, but this is just it, Mikhail, is that, like, you don't even need to do this coded language argument. Like, Jesus, read some of the Dionysus stories, right? As soon as you read any of the Dionysian stories, like, straight up ancient Greek myth, Dionysus, you're just like, oh, that's Jesus Christ. Like, it's really close. Like, it's a 1-to-1. Like, Dionysus dies and resurrects. Dionysus is the god of wine. What's Jesus known for? Turning water into wine, right? A lot of the miracles that Jesus does, Dionysus does, right? And the whole concept of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is pretty firmly tied into the same concept of Dionysus' death and resurrection. Like, so, Jesus isn't strictly Dionysus. He's also the god Ra, And there's a lot of stories that tie in from that, which makes sense. Like the Roman Empire is this hodgepodge of slaves, right, that come from Egypt and Greece and the Celtic regions and all this kind of stuff. And so Christ ends up being like a conglomeration of many different gods and many different stories in order to try to get these disparate, broken groups to organize and work together under a new banner. And that new banner is Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. DJ, good to see you, bud. Working as terror brought upon us by the ruling class. I mean, yeah. Like, here's a thought. Just a crazy thought. I'm just going to throw this out here, guys. Okay? I'm just going to throw this out here, you guys. So how about instead of all of the wealth going up to about 5 people, right? How about instead of this dumb bullshit right here, right? How about instead of this stupid nonsense, we just give everybody access to food and shelter, right? Everybody just gets access to food and shelter. And as a way of payment for getting access to that food and shelter, we all put in as much labor into the agricultural industry and into the maintenance and building of infrastructure as is necessary for us all to have access to food and shelter. And then everything else is somewhat superfluous, isn't it? Like everything else is a little bit like the entire financial industry is a bit superfluous. About 40% of our economy, right? Just a bunch of people shuffling papers around so that some rich people can enslave us, more or less. And we could be like, think about the cool stuff that we could actually be doing. Like I have said it over and over again on this channel. I think I'm going to be a 78-year-old man and I'll be saying this into this mic. We would all be better off walking into the wilderness and into fields and onto beaches, sitting down and just staring at the sky. We would all be better off if we all just did that collectively for a period of time than do what we're doing now. Like, what we're doing now is absolutely fucking insane. That the moment you take one step back, that if you attempt to put yourself in the position of the aliens that the government is now saying definitely exist, please ignore the financial collapse of the society, but take a look of the society from the perspective of those aliens. And if you even attempt to do that, the very first thing that you've got to come up with is, these fucking monkeys are stupid. Holy fucking shit, what a bunch of dim-witted, dumb little monkeys. What everybody in the society requires food. Everybody in the society requires food. That's a given, right? That's a universal truism. There are not that many hard and fast universal rules that we all must follow, but eat food or die is definitely one of them. And instead of saying, oh, well, we got to make sure that that's set, right? We got to make sure that everybody just has access to food or shelter. We have instead created a system that says, oh, well, we need to make as much food as possible and then withhold that food from everybody so that they have to work for it from the owners of the food in the society. And if they can't, then they starve or are homeless, or get limited access to it, right? Limited, tiny access to it. And while we're limiting that access and restricting access of the food to everybody, we're going to throw away 40% of it. We are dim-witted. We are fucking stupid. That anyone with half a brain in their head who wanted to structure anything reasonable at all would immediately be like, oh, we have this crazy machine that's just shitting food at us, so everyone gets it, or requires a tiny little fraction of labor. Oh, okay, well, rather than enslaving people in this temporary foreign workers program, let's just have people go do the small amount of labor that's required in order to do this. The agriculture industry is something like 2 to 4% of the populace is required for this, right? and it's not an all year round kind of thing. You literally could just spread this around. You could build this into the education system. You could literally say like, hey, congratulations, you graduated grade 12. So your next year, you're going to go work in the farms, and we'll consider that part of your education, right? For 1 year, a kid goes and works out in the farms. Oh, big fucking deal, right? We're already definitely willing to already put kids in fucking factories and shit already at the age of 12. Right, we're already maiming kids in factories at the age of 12. I think that a new graduate, 18 years old, can go work in a fucking farm field for a year, right? And we just keep doing that. Or hey, come to a guy like me, be like, hey, let's take you out to the field for a season. Fantastic. Can I be a beekeeper? I'd love to be a beekeeper. It's literally what I would like to do. Is just be a beekeeper. Be great. Just being a beekeeper. But gotta have the land, right? Gotta have the equipment. Gotta have access to capital and resources. Right? And then you gotta compete with like Billy Bees. So good fucking luck. And so you could structure your entire society this way. Just say, oh, let's have our own citizens involve themselves in the labor pool. And then everybody just gets access to food and everybody gets access to shelter, which doesn't require that much labor, right? It doesn't require that much labor. And then everybody just fuck off, right? Just fuck off. What are we doing shit for? Like, what are we doing this shit for? Like, for real. Like, what are we actually doing this shit for? This is my favorite part, right? This is my absolute fucking favorite part about this whole fucking narrative, is that we're all just like, oh, gotta be productive, gotta be working our asses off all the time, constantly, and the result, we're gonna blow up the fucking planet. We're literally gonna destroy. We're literally gonna destroy ourselves, right? Yeah. Is it really hard to admit slavery was an abhorrent institution and there was nothing good about it? Yeah. I know, right? There's this new strain of thinking that is trying to defend slavery somehow. It's just like an abomination. But considering that there's the rise of these obvious Nazis who are trying to kill us, right? Like, this is my favorite part about our society. I'm not going to let this thread go. My absolute favorite part of our society is that we are actually destroying ourselves through climate change. Like, literally, we are making it so that our society will not be able to sustain itself. Literally. We won't have food. We won't have water. We won't have these base necessities. We won't be able to survive the heat. I've seen videos from Arizona where street signs are melting, where people are passing out in the heat, where cactuses are dying in the heat. You understand that there are plants that exist and have existed for thousands of years, evolving in desert heat in order to specifically survive the desert heat, that are now dying in the desert heat. You understand? You understand what's coming for us? But boy howdy are we ever productive. Boy howdy are we ever making shareholder value. And now our dim-witted, slow-minded, psychopathic rulers are saying giant space umbrella. This is from The Independent. This is a real thing. This isn't some bullshit. Giant space umbrella tethered to asteroid could protect Earth from climate crisis. Study says. Hey guys, scientists have theorized a new approach to involving a giant space umbrella to use as a solar shield to protect the Earth from excess sunlight and thus help reduce its impact on global warming. So the solution that's coming out of these fucking dumbasses' brains is that episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns blocks out the sun so everyone needs to use power all the time, which increases his value. Right, there's your capitalist innovation right there, kids. what we're going to do, instead of no longer polluting, instead of redressing the many contradictions that exist within our society, okay, everybody listen up. This is a very serious thing that we're talking about here. We're talking about climate change, okay, everybody, it's a very serious thing that we're talking about here. Yep. So we're not going to do anything to stop pollution. In fact, we are definitely going to sell even more of those World War II tanks, right? You know, they're called trucks, right? You know those GMC trucks? They're the size of World War II tanks. That's not hyperbolic. That's absolutely the case. In fact, I'll bring that up right now. That's a real great thing for everybody to see because it's really, really absurd and stupid. So, trucks are the size of World War II tanks. Do I have the graph? Hold on. No, this is a come on. Come on. There was this really great picture that just got it. They're burying it. Big truck. Okay, forget it. It was a bit. Forget it. It's too late. Forget it. Stop asking. Literally no one's asking. So instead of shutting down all this pollution, instead of dealing with the reality of what it is to be a human living in a system that requires sustainability, instead of that, what we're going to do is we're going to block out the sun. That's what we're going to do. Like, we are fucking dumbasses. Glazy comes in strong, all caps. Trump 2024. Fuck Canada and fuck communism. Oh, he spelt it correctly. Good for you, bud. Yeah, I think Trump actually has a good shot at it, honestly. I think he's already gone, so it doesn't matter. But, like, I actually do think Trump has a good shot at it. I think that this whole indictment hearing is actually strengthening him. Right? What's going on in this chat over here? Why not set off Yellowstone? What are you even talking about, bro? Midnight Rose writes, selling off state assets and factories for pennies. Oh, you're talking about Ukraine? Yeah. Yeah, they're privatizing Ukraine. Like, that was always the end game, right? Like, that's always the end game. The whole point, like, capitalists are vultures, right? How to make the best of a bad situation. Really, I think there's a big looming question about Ukraine, right? And the big looming question is, what's America's exit strategy? Like, how does America actually allow Russia to keep the territory that it has? Because it's got this territory. It's not going to not have that territory. Like, tough, right? Anybody who comes into my chat and says that, they're gonna get that territory back, I tell you what, you're dumb. That's not going to happen. Right? That we have already reached the end of the Ukrainian military's capacity. We've reached the end of NATO's willingness to contribute troops, certainly. And it's getting harder and harder to actually commit any more weapons, right? Meanwhile, Russia is like heavily militarizing its economy, right? It has more trading partners than ever in this military way. It literally just signed a series of trade agreements in order to bolster its military ranks. Ukraine is a depleted force. That the Russian military has defeated them. And that the only reason why the Russians are not advancing is because they don't want to. Because they know they'd be stepping into a quagmire. because they know that the territory they've got is full of people going, oh, thank God the Russians are here. Oh, God, thank goodness the Russians are here. And the only ones that aren't going, oh, thank God the Russians are here, are fucking Nazis. So it's like, you know, history repeating itself with the Russians again. And yet how to let Russia keep that territory and pretend like the West won. Here's the strategy, Isaac, right? You got to understand, when it comes to war, capitalists are like razor sharp, seeing into the future forever, for eons and decades. When it comes to literally anything else, it's 4 months, and then the future is a bleak black kind of thing. Don't even bother planning. The free market will decide. When it comes to war, these guys know exactly what to do. And this is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to, quote unquote, be at war with Russia for 10 more years, right? They'll just keep, quote unquote, being at war. And every so often, there'll be like a big report about an event or something in the ongoing conflict in the Ukrainian government, and they'll keep maintaining the bullshit narrative that Russia's completely unprovoked, 100%. All we were just standing around shaking hands and giving kisses to babies, and then the Russians just came in out of nowhere like Hitler. Like, they'll just keep talking about it that way, and dumbasses like Destiny and Vosh will be like, yeah, that's right. They crossed that invisible line for no reason, and that was wrong. Meanwhile, the rest of us who have brains in our heads will be like, nah, brah, like, we were fucking around. Like, we fucked around, we found out. Simple as that. We fucked around, we found out. And so, but 10 years from now, like, I'm going to be 50, sitting here, being like, and there'll be some president that'll just be like, so we're going to drop an agreement. It'll be Trump Jr. That's what it'll be. Trump Jr. will be in office. Don Jr. will be in office. And he'll be like, today is a magnificent day. My father would be so proud of me. I'm the best son that's ever existed. Me, Don Jr., the best Trump ever. Seconded only by my father, greatest president who ever lived. They stole the election from him, but I'm coming back for you, Pop. We're signing a peace agreement today with Russia so that I can open casinos in Moscow. War over. And most Americans, by the time that this happens, by the time that the United States declares peace or whatever, most of America will be like, what? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, right. Like, it'll be the same as when they left Afghanistan, right? It'll be the same kind of vibe. That when Biden stood up and said, all right, everybody, we're leaving Afghanistan. When he said that, like, the media had a bit of a shitstorm over it. The media was like, oh, but the entire populace was just like, like, war weariness is the way of it. And when they finally declare that, like, conflict over in like 5 or 10 years, right? Or, like, let's say Trump gets in and just ends it, right? You'll have like a small group of internet weirdos whose profile picture is still the Ukrainian flag. You're like, we stand with Ukraine, Slava Ukraine, and other Nazi phrases. So there's that. But then, like, Americans don't care. Like, Americans don't give a shit. They don't actually care. Like, that's the thing that I think people are like it's Americans are full of shit. Like, it's all bluster. It's all talk, right? Like, they don't actually give a shit. They don't actually care, right? Are you enlisting? Are you going over there to fight? No? Why not? Oh, is it because you kind of understand that this whole thing is bullshit? Like, you understand that it's total nonsense? You don't actually give a shit? And it'll just end. You know? Like, I think there are a lot of people who are sort of standing around being like, there's going to be some kind of big dramatic finale. There's going to be some kind of big thing. Nah. It'll just eventually get to the point where, like, nobody cares. And everybody will be watching, like, you know, Beyonce's daughter twerking with Nicki Minaj and, like, the ghost of Madonna. And everybody will be like, woo, yeah! And, like, there'll be some, like, new Nazi pop star who's literally, like, controversial pop singer Britney, Britney, what's a good, strong Nazi name? Britney is a good start. Won't be Britney, though, because of Britney. But, like, Gem Star, there you go, strong Nazi name, Gem Star, right? Doing the goose step across the stage, making out with the ghost of Madonna, right? Nobody will give a fuck. Nobody will care. It'll just end, and then everybody will move on, right? And America will continue trying to convince everybody that everything's fine and they're the kings. That's it. Just like they always have and just like they always will. Brittany Stormer. Now we're talking. Really putting it on the front. No, it's got to be like Hillary Stormer, right? Really get that H in there, or like Addie, right? Give her like an AH name. You know what I'm talking about? You know where I'm going with this, you guys. You know where I'm going with this. Anyway, enough of this fucking cosplay bullshit. Like, the American government and the American ruling class does not give a fuck about Ukraine or its people. Like, it doesn't care about it at all. That I am actually of the opinion that if they could somehow, like, set off a device that just eliminates all of the Ukrainians and leaves the resources, and if they had robots to come and get all the resources, they would do that. You know, if they could get away with it. And like, we're kind of there. Like, fucking, like, who gives a shit about this? Like, people don't actually care. Like, people care about the outrage. That's what they care about. People coming in here don't really give a fuck about Ukraine, right? They care about the outrage. And they want to be outraged. And that's all it is. If we wanted to block the sun, all we had to do is set off a super volcano. Why use an umbrella like in Futurama? I mean, I think they're trying to control it, is the thing. If you just set off a super volcano, like, you don't have control of that. Right? They're at least trying to pretend like they give a shit about human life. You know, they're at least trying to... They at least care about themselves, right? Although, question mark. Yeah, it'll be like those magazines that still talk about celebrity drama. Nobody cares and nobody will care, yeah. Yeah, an AH name with 8 letters in the first and last name. You got it. See, you're figuring it out, Midnight Rose. You're figuring it out. Yeah, neutron bombs win. If only we had more efficient weapons of mass genocide. Yeah. Like, we're... like, we're nuts, right? Like, what's going on is crazy, what we're doing. Like, I feel like anybody my age should be able to, at this point, sit down and do a retrospective of the last 20 years, right? Like 9/11, right? Big moment. I know that when that was happening, people were taking that very seriously. I know for myself, I didn't really know what to think. And I was then as I am now, which is an internet weirdo. And I went deep down the 9/11 truth rabbit hole, for sure. And glad I did, honestly. And the war on terror, like, it's still fucking happening. Like, the war on terror has been the background of our lives for 20 plus years. Before that, it was like this Cold War shit. There was like this Cold War background of our lives. And now it's this like war on terror. And it's becoming like, at least the Cold War had a kind of like rationale behind it. There was kind of a like, kind of a logic of some sort. But the war on terror has just made us unhinged. Like, we're just completely unhinged. And it's become really fucking obvious. And like, once you understand that the war in Iraq was as illegitimate as a war gets, it does not get more illegitimate than that. Literally, we invaded a region to steal its resources based on false pretense, based on a lie. And that has created a cascading series of wars that has become never-ending. And the entire rest of the world is looking at us saying, you guys are fucking out of your minds. You're out of your minds. And they are right to say so. That if we had gone into that region and realized there were no weapons of mass destruction, and then been like, oopsie-doo, and then like withdrawn, the rest of the world might have seen it in their hearts somehow to be like, oh, okay, like, you guys fucked up, but like, you're not fuck-ups. But we're fuck-ups. Like, we are a massive, enormous fuck-ups. We're fuck-ups with nukes. Yeah, it's become like a war on reality. Yeah, and this is actually true. This ties into what I was talking about religious fundamentalists earlier, which is that the hardest thing for a person to do is to deal with themselves. And in that process of dealing with themselves, the most difficult thing to do, no question, nothing else is even remotely close, is to admit that you are wrong. That people will do all kinds of things. People will go to aggressive lengths to avoid even beginning the process of dealing with themselves. And people will murder people to avoid admitting that they were wrong. They will create fictional narratives. They will create false events. They will do everything they possibly can to simply avoid saying, I've thought about it. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. It's the most difficult thing for a person to do, and it's no different for societies. And because America has fucked up so royally and is continually fucking up and cannot stop fucking up, there is no such thing as self-analysis in America. They actively purge from their ranks people who might actually do any kind of critical self-analysis. They actively purge from their ranks those people on purpose. So there's no critical self-analysis happening. That the best we ever got about Iraq was, okay, that was an oopsie-doo, a strategic blunder. Not even an oopsie-doo, right? Because saying oopsie-doo sort of implies a moral wrong. No, it was a strategic blunder. So absolutely no self-analysis about the moral position or the ethical position of doing so. Absolutely zero. Only willing to admit that strategically it was an error. Oh, okay, I see. So the spirit behind it was correct. The ethos of it was correct. The prevailing ideology of it was correct. You just didn't do it right. Got it. And this ethos is what is guiding us today as we invade the rest of the world. As we invade the entire rest of the world. And the entire rest of the world is fucking sick of it. It's fucking sick of it. And we are going to pay an enormously heavy cost. We are going to pay an enormously heavy cost. Which headline were we looking at, bud? Because there's a bunch. Just for you, Mr. Moon. Over 11,000 LA workers plan to strike, hope to shut down city. Let's go. These Nazis want to turn New England into a white ethno state. Canada plans new temporary foreign workers program to give trusted employees quicker access. Oh, umbrella on an asteroid. Yeah, bro. Why? Yeah, and don't you understand? Climate change obsession is a real mental disorder. Right? If you care about the future of your children, if you care about the future of your society, if you care about the future of humanity, well, that's a mental disorder, I tell you what. I've never seen a mental disorder as bad as a person saying climate change is real and they feel bad about it. If Canada slowly declines and becomes a forest again, that's fine with me, yeah. But I own 10 electric cars. I thought that tearing up all that cobalt and using 15 times the amount of copper and actually polluting more than it actually helps. Like, that's the best part. That's the best part about electric cars. Is that they're not carbon neutral. Like, they're not carbon neutral. Like, electric cars still pollute. Like, this, when are we going to put it together, man? Like, when are we going to put two and two together? That we are still polluting. Like, stop polluting. If we took all of the finance, if we took all of the energy that we were putting into making electric cars, so just Tesla doesn't exist. All of the government subsidies and all of that does not exist. Goodbye, Tesla. Farewell. You are done. And if we took all of that money and time and energy and we put it into mass public transit, that would be 10 times. I don't know exactly how many times. That's a bullshit number. It would be way more effective, though, than all this electric car bullshit. The capitalists are innovating in the way that capitalists innovate, which is that they're creating a problem and then selling you the solution to that problem that is itself not a solution. They are, by definition, snake oil salesmen, liars and grifters. Like, this whole fucking dumbass shit. Like, are you kidding me? We're what is this if just what is this except a way to just funnel money away from the public? What is this if not just a way to funnel more money away from the public? Right? It's just like the carbon capture technology. It's just a way to grift the populace into saying, yeah, okay, I'll be taxed a bunch of money for this worthless thing that does nothing. Like, these people are worthless, pathetic, sad little middlemen who just want to siphon as much money away from you as they possibly can before they abandon you, which is obviously the strategy. It's obviously what we're doing here. And we're just watching them do it. It's crazy. Leon, good to see you, bud. America has always declared dissent to be a mental disorder. Slaves who objected to escape from slavery were told they were mentally ill. Yeah. Yeah, Detroit already decaying along with others in Gary, Indiana. Absolutely. I will not accept this Detroit slander. Yes, it's part of the Rust Belt, but it's not that bad. It's pretty bad, Midnight Rose, I hate to tell you. We've seen the pictures. Yeah, the biggest threat to our future is the USA thrashing land, lashing as it circles the drain. The point is America is full of dying towns. Yeah, that's absolutely the point. Like, I am dead convinced of this. Like, I don't like to make big predictions, because often they are wrong, right? But this one, I think I'm pretty safe. I actually think I'm really safe saying this. That I wish there was a way that I could put money on this. If somebody finds out a way for me to put money on this, you let me know. Because I think I've got a sure bet here. America balkanizes in our lifetime. That I am going to watch, and you are all going to watch, Texas, California, Florida, all secede from the Union. That they're all just, everything's going to break apart. And the reason why I think that this is like sure money bet is because if you look at the history of empire, it's actually the most likely thing to happen. That anytime any empire has ever existed on Earth, it lasts for a period of time, and then once it falls into decline, it begins to balkanize and break apart. And then after a period of time, that balkanization process might reverse itself, right? You might have certain sections that were part of the whole rejoin and all of that. But the most likely thing for us to watch, for us to see during this period of time, is balkanization. And it's not going to look pretty. Like, it's not going to look pretty in America. It's not going to be nice. Like, the far-right neo-Nazis are more organized than we are. By a lot. Like, it's significant. And the far-right seems to understand more intrinsically than the left does that it's about creating local social groups. Right? Like, that's essentially what these guys are doing. They're all getting together in person and doing their weird little Nazi salutes and like being weird, creepy weirdos together and taking over neighborhoods. Like, I think it's too much to say that the capitalist system as a whole ceases to exist. I don't think that that's going to happen. Because the ruling class will always have their own internal economy. Like, things are different now than the Great Depression. Like, the scale of the wealth, I think people really misunderstand. Like, really, really misunderstand the scale of the wealth. And I think they also really, really misunderstand the detachment from America that the wealthy have. Like, these people are not patriots. They do not care about America at all. 0%. No fucks given. That it's about, for them, it's about having the power and keeping the power. And most of these guys, near as I can tell, are going to become like James Bond villains. Like, they're going to have their weird little compounds. They're going to have their like little pedophile islands. They're going to have places that they can retreat to. Like, Jeff Bezos is going to be able to get into like an escape rocket and shoot himself to an island that nobody can get to. Right? Where he'll have like servants and guards and shit. And he'll have his own like built-in economy. Like, he'll have his own private food production, and he'll have his own like little island. And we will be abandoned. Like, this is what's going to happen to most of these guys. That most of these guys are just going to be like, oh, I can just live like a king in a place on like the top of a mountain. I can like go to Mount Everest. I can blow up the top of Mount Everest and build a palace on top of Mount Everest and just load it with guards and prostitutes and children I want to fuck. Like, I could just load it up like that, and nobody can say shit to me, because I'm Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Zuckerberg or whoever, right? Buffett or whatever, or whatever the next generation of these psychopaths are going to be, and we're not going to be able to get to them, and they're always going to be able to find like people to exploit. Because they're gonna be like fucking Sauron. They're gonna be like these like mythical, demonic, dragon-esque type evil creatures that will all like speak of in whispers. He who shall not be named. It's literally like Jeff Bezos' son. You know, he's never actually been outside the compound, and he's like being like, you guys just need to work harder. Like, we'll only ever see this guy through like digital screens and shit, which they'll use to like torment us with while we're on the factory line, right? While we're wearing our like Bezos collars or whatever. Like I really think that the biggest thing, like if I had to go back in time to my youth, to when I was really connecting in to all this kind of stuff, I think the number one thing that I really would try to focus on getting people to understand faster is the scale of the wealth. Because I think even now, even people in this chat right now, right, do not understand the scale of the wealth that we are talking about. I just don't think we like, even someone like me, like, I do not fully comprehend or understand the scale of wealth that we are talking about. These people can buy countries. Like, these people own more than entire countries. That if a country can do something, these people can do it by themselves. That this is the scale of the wealth that we are talking about. And the breakdown that's coming, they are going to do everything they possibly can to insulate themselves from that. That the Great Depression, or a Great Depression, is going to happen to us. It will not happen to them. And unlike when the Great Depression happened, the people who had the wealth were still bound to America, right? They didn't have so much wealth that they could purchase private islands. So as this balkanization process begins, you're going to have this other layer of just corporate ownership. Mikhail writes, sounds like the stock market would be the money bet somehow. Would balkanization be foretold by the stock market somehow? I have a hard time listening serious to the market, quote-unquote, gurus. Yeah, I mean, I'm more or less of the opinion that the market gurus only talk so that they can trick people into doing stuff so that they can exploit them. Like, that's more or less the grift that I see. Yeah, in the U.S., they're targeting power grids and substations, for sure. Juan writes, the next generation of psychopaths will be the Lex Luthors of the world, but even Lex Luthor had better morals than these psychopaths. Yeah. Yet 0.6% of the world population owns 50% of the global wealth. They earned it. They worked hard. Bill Gates started from nothing. Mikhail Johnson, we are approaching a point where someone will have as much money as a single person has microbes in their body. Midnight Rose says, Pepsi was hiring far-right death squads in the 90s. Imagine what they're doing now. Yeah, exactly. Like, exactly. Somebody by the name of world-famous Kirk Lazarus in Twitch. Are you Team Azov or Team Wagner? I wouldn't say that I'm Team either of those guys. That I just have a more nuanced understanding of what's going on in Ukraine than the average American or Canadian. Like, I don't think I would align myself with a Nazi battalion or a mercenary group. You know what I mean? Like, the existence of the Wagner group is an unfortunate reality of war. And the Azov Battalion is a disgusting group that I'm glad it's getting smashed. The truth of what happened in Ukraine is that there was a coup in 2014 that launched what's called the Donbass War, where the Azov Battalion started murdering ethnic Russians in Ukraine, and eventually Putin had to respond. That's more or less the truth. And I can get more specific if you want to, but I wouldn't say that makes me Team Wagner. Like, mercenary groups are not a good way to run a war. It's not a good way to run a war with mercenary groups. I mean, as you can see, like, there was the moment where, like to me, the genuine end of that conflict was when the Wagner group charged towards Moscow. When they had their little insurrection moment and they threw their little hissy fit and they charged on up to Moscow, I was like, oh, the war's over, right? No reasonable, rational group of people is going to charge towards a military force with another military force at their back, right? Like, that's a suicide march all the way, unless the military force at their back has already been defeated. So to me, when Wagner did that, I was like, oh, this war is actually over. That everything we're watching now is just sort of cleanup and scuffles. That the probing of the Russian defenses are just more or less like scattered groups of military personnel. There is no like real organized force on the front line. That the only reason why the Russians don't seize more territory is because they don't want it. That they understand that they would be kicking the hornet's nest, and they understand they would be opening themselves up to a quagmire. That the territory they have now is full of a bunch of people who are saying, oh, thank God the Russians are here. Whereas charging forward into further into Ukraine, they would meet a lot more resistance from the civilians that are there. And also, I think they would meet a lot more resistance from the West. When Wagner did that, they were not the front. They had been rotated out. Still, though, straight up, Aaron, like, still, like, I just like, it's such a aggressive military move. Like, to me, it implies that there's a general sense of completion and safety amongst the ranks. That, like, they don't need to worry about the Ukrainians breaking their lines. And honestly, the more I see, especially recently, the more I'm just looking at like a scattered group of Ukrainians sort of just flailing against the Russian line. And the Russians just aren't pushing because they just don't want the trouble. They've got the territory they want. Fighting is more intense now than it ever was? No. Like, not like, I mean, there's people shooting. Sure. But like, I don't think it's very serious. Why did the Donetsk People's Republic shoot down a civilian airliner? I don't think I know anything about the civilian airliner, mate. I think you just read a headline. Like, there's a lot of misinformation out there, so just don't believe everything you see. Was it because they were mad about the coup? I mean, the coup is a big reason why... the coup is the reason, in fact, why there was the uprising that happened in the Donbass region in the first place. Like, if your government was couped... especially by your historical antagonists, I don't think you would just sit by and watch it happen, right? Like, the fighting isn't more intense now than it's ever been. Really, dude, like, what are you reading? Because you got to stop. Like, you got to stop. Like, there's no significant threat coming for the Russians. Like, now we are in a grinding war of attrition. That's where we're at. This is a grinding war of attrition. And the grinding war of attrition is favoring the Russians. And it's favoring the Russians for a lot of really solid reasons. First of all, the Russians have more population. They can put in more troops. Right? The Ukrainians cannot do that. And NATO is not committing troops. Certainly not on the scale that Russia can. And if it comes down to it, Russia will. And then in terms of like gear, like Russia has changed much of its economy into a war economy. Ukraine can't do that, right? Isn't capable of doing that, and NATO isn't going to do that for them. So I just don't see where this position comes from. Like I mean I guess if you're reading like CNN what CNN is saying, but like the truth of the matter is that the line that has been drawn in Ukraine, the front line that's been drawn, has been that way for a long time. And any time that there has been any gains made, it's been on the side of the Russians. So this idea that the Ukrainians are going to push the Russians back, like it's a fairy tale. It's a fantasy of the highest order. And if people are telling you otherwise, those people are lying to you to sell you on the idea of sending more money to that war. And most of that money just goes into the pockets of the war industry anyway. So it's just ridiculous. What is a good source I could look at to read up on the shoot-down of Malaysian Airlines Flight 7? I don't even know what you're talking about, bro. Like, it just seems to me to be not relevant. Like, I don't know what you're even talking about. USA will reinstate a draft for World War before it breaks apart. I mean, this is the problem, Lou, is that the Pentagon itself has said that 70% of citizens are not viable for military service. So if they do a draft, they're not going to get people. People are the United States' free market has made everybody fat, mentally ill, drug addicted, depressed, filled with anxiety, weak. Like, they didn't train soldiers. They didn't get people ready for a major conflict or a major war, right? Because that's not what it's about. It's not about getting people into a major conflict. It's about convincing the Americans to accept taxation. That's what it's about. Yeah, of course I follow the war, my man. I just don't listen to bullshit sources. Because I don't give a shit what like CNN has to say. Straight up, I don't listen to the CIA. Like, the CIA is like straight up proven it's not capable of telling you the truth. That if the CIA tells you the truth, it's only to lie to you further. It's only to lie to you further. A good source that I suggest people seek out if they would like to see just very brief information, like what I really value about Southern Front, I'll say that again, Southern Front. What I value about those guys, and you can find them on Odyssey, what I value about them, and I'm happy that I found them, is that they give you raw data. They're not giving you a narrative. They're straight up just like, this target was hit, this target was hit, this target was hit, these people pushed in here, and then they give you kind of like a rough overview of like the meta, but they don't really fill you with like a big narrative. That if they're lying, it's downplaying more than anything. It's not an explicit, like, this didn't happen or this did happen. It's like, sure, this did happen, but it wasn't as crucial. That kind of thing. What military analysts say the war is cooling off in terms of intensity of combat? I suggest that you seek out Colonel Douglas McGregor. He's been... also, I think Scott Ritter is a excellent source. He former UN weapon inspector, was the UN weapon inspector for the Iraq War, the first one, Desert Storm, and Douglas McGregor, of course, is what's his rank? He's a colonel. He's a colonel in the military, and so I think that there are alternative voices that I suggest that you seek out, because this whole, oh my God, the fighting is as crazy as it's ever... Like, I mean, there's fighting. Like, don't get me wrong. Oh, so you're just like, nah, okay. Straight up, Aaron. Like, because your source is basically the CIA. And I don't give a shit what those guys say. Like, yeah, credentials fallacy. Oh, okay. So you know more. Okay. What's your sources? I gave you sources, and you just basically shrugged and said, no, I like the CIA better. What's your sources? The CIA? Because I can't tell you a more incredulous organization than that. Like, come on, you're the expert. What are your sources? I was playing with kid gloves with you before here, bud. What are your sources? You're the expert. You obviously know what's going on. Come on, let's search up some sources. Let's find out. What are you talking about? And we're willing to just shrug and be like, oh, those guys suck. Oh, okay. I can't wait to see your CIA sources. What are your sources? Yeah, you're right about that, Leon. I mean, Scott Ritter got sideswiped by that shit, if you ask me. Like he got set up in a CIA sting. Like, I think that's pretty straightforward, and that's not to absolve him, obviously, but like, it is deeply regrettable, because you're right. Not that the mainstream media would have platformed him. Yeah, they took advantage of a major character flaw for sure, and certainly in a time of familial weakness, without a doubt. Hey, world famous Lazarus. Basic respect, eh? Like just one human to another, like basic human respect. No need to be talking to people like that. Just basic human respect. And now we got dead silence from Aaron. That's great. Scrambling around trying to find a source that isn't directly connected to the CIA. Isn't that funny how that works? Huh? Isn't that funny how that always works? Right? People say, hey, John, what are your sources? And I give sources, and then they just go, bah! And that's the end of that conversation. But when I ask for sources, it's fucking nothing. Just 0% of anything. Right? Oh, it's www.cia.ca.com. A lot of different journalists. The latest podcast. Like I said, the Ukraine, the latest podcast. Who's they? Yeah, it looks through Our World News. Like, who's they? A lot of good. Ander plus Nelson. Who's they? Who are they having on? www.cia.com. Like, who's they? Like, you're being a bit like, because you know where this goes, Aaron. Like, you know exactly where this is going to go. You're going to finally cough up your source, or you're just going to shut up and stay quiet about it, and then I'm going to look it up, and we're going to find out that it's the fucking CIA. That's what's going to happen here. And you're just deciding to spare yourself. So just spare yourself. Guys, Scott Ritter's past is pure nonsense. If you actually listen to Scott Ritter's side of the story, he will straight up tell you that the state went after him and would not allow his evidence. Oh, interesting. I have sort of always assumed that there was like some kind of other story to this, but like and I've seen a video where he does talk about it, but honestly, I've just never really delved into it too deeply. And I should, I should. Because my assumption always was that it was like a sting and that there was bullshit going on, right? The state went after him. He would not allow evidence contradicting their narrative. They even brought his laptop to a computer guy and said, find any child porn or anything they accused me of. The guy gave a written certificate of the court. Leon says, didn't he admit to being on an age, I assume that says restricted, or an age, this stupid heart right here is making it. Ben Hodges has been on what? Has been on what? Like, on what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I should be able to search this, right? What's this they that you keep talking about? Oh, this podcast. They. Who's they? Like, Ben Hodges. Oh, straight up a general. A retired United States Army who served as commanding as a commanding general, right? What podcast? Right. So you're listening to the guys who want the war to keep going, right? So you got a general heavily invested in ensuring that the war continues. Senior advisor to human rights first, very nice. Also serves as NATO's senior mentor for logistics. So NATO. Great. So NATO thinks the war is going crazy and we're fighting as hard as we can and we definitely need your taxes. NATO needs your taxes. More taxes for NATO. Yeah, okay, great. I know what NATO's position is. Like, it's basically going how I thought it was going to go. Like, NATO is going to say to you, we're winning this thing and we're kicking ass out there and the fighting is going crazier than it's ever gone before in its entire history and the Ukrainians are putting up a hell of a fight and we're going to push back that Russian line and we're going to drop 1 million bombs and we're going to create a difficult situation for Putin and we just need and all we need from you is to look into your hearts and send $9.99 to the address down below. That's the grift. Like, we know what NATO's going to say, bud. Like, you're just listening to NATO and just being like, yeah, NATO said it. Yup. That's what I think because NATO said it. Oh, my God. Just the straight up, like, Russian propaganda line, eh? Embarrassing. Russian propaganda. That's what that is. Certainly not a concerned citizen who's actually taking a look at the situation and coming out with his own ideas. Right? Russian propaganda. Okay. Well, if it is Russian propaganda, then probably the truth lives between those two poles. Right? Yeah, and what podcast? You keep referring to a podcast. It's sort of weird that you're not actually saying the name of the podcast, frankly. My propaganda is superior to your propaganda. Yeah. Yeah, we had a good start, Mikhail. Like, straight up. Like, the organizations that have lied to us several times and that actually have gotten us into several wars predicated completely on lies, they say this is what's happening. And if you think otherwise, that's Russian propaganda. Ukraine the latest. Oh, okay. Ukraine the latest podcast. Here we go. Sorry, bud. I think I was just misreading or misunderstanding. I will apologize for that. Okay, so Ukraine the latest. And Wikipedia. Doesn't look like it's even got a Wikipedia page. Okay, so where's this coming from? The latest podcast. Is it Telegraph? So it looks like it's the Telegraph. Okay, great. Telegraph. Wikipedia. No, the Daily Telegraph. Great. A British national daily broadsheet newspaper published in London, Telegraph Media Group. Distributed in the United Kingdom internationally. It was founded by Arthur B. Slay in 1855. Considered a newspaper of record. Oh, very good. In the years up to 1997, so no longer a newspaper of record. I wonder what changed. Was, is, and will be. Oh, very good. Yeah, the Telegraph. I've never really done a deep dive into the Telegraph. So this is fun. So who owns this thing? The proprietor of Daily Telegraph. Ooh. Hollinger Inc. of Toronto, Canada. The newspaper group controlled by the Canadian-American businessman Conrad Black. Oh, good. Acquired the group, months bidding, Hollander Inc., the newspaper. Okay. It's been a while since I've, like, done a good deep dive into a media company. Private limited company. Key people. Doink, doink, doink. I gotta tell you, man, this looks like just like billionaire oligarchy shit. Like normal stuff. The Barkley brothers. Handbag.com. Yodel. I love it. Are these guys straight up just like tax exile accusations? Ritz hotel bugging? Yeah, these guys are just twerps. Like these guys are just twerps. The very group in Little Woods. They were listed in 42nd place with an estimated at 270 million pounds. Oh, David died. David died, guys, on the 10th of January, 2021 after a short illness. Well, thoughts and prayers. All right. Sir David Rowett Barkley. $7 billion. Avoiding publicity. Yeah, but just see, this is smart. I actually think that this is super, super smart. Like, billionaires who do this earn my respect. They get a little badge of respect from me. Avoid publicity. Avoid publicity as much as you possibly can. Right? So what do we got, right? We got a couple of oligarchs, right? $7 billion, right? They're tied in to the military-industrial complex. They're tied into the propaganda system, right? Pretty straightforwardly. Occupation businessmen, right? We got a chairman of the Spectator, fantastic. Andrew Neil. Appointed editor of the Sunday Times by Rupert Murdoch. Contributor to the Daily Mail. Okay, all right. Okay, also part of Murdoch's. So he's tied in with Murdoch. Great. So we know exactly what the perspective of this newspaper is, dude. Oh, yeah. This guy's actually, like, big tied in. Right? It was argued he was appointed by Rupert Murdoch. So this guy's literally getting appointed. Like there is a point in this guy's life where Rupert Murdoch is looking at him and being like, "You shall be king. You shall be the king." Yeah. So okay. So it's corporate media, right? It's just corporate propaganda media. Yeah, MI6, like the British CIA, right? And it's NATO shit. I don't know that I would describe Telegraph as a rag. Like, it's declined in favor. I mean, I think that the key one to really pay attention to is there was one thing that I really briefly read, and that's my biggest takeaway was considered a newspaper of record in the Times in the UK of the years up to 1997. The Telegraph is described as being one of the world's greatest titles. So, I mean, just my glancing sort of takeaway is, like, at one point it was really considered to be, like, high-level, really important stuff. But then 97, right? And what happens around 97? Probably Rupert Murdoch starts getting fucking involved in it. Right? And as soon as Rupert Murdoch's involved in something, man, like we're talking like this is Fox News, like this is far right hawk shit, right? This is literally war, war, war all the time, right? And again, so okay, that's all great. So here's the source. You got a corporate media source, right? That's putting on podcasts, right? Sending out information about the Ukrainian war, right? And obviously their bias and their interest is to platform NATO and to platform pro-Ukrainian war sources, right? Like, they're not going to put somebody on who's critical. They're not actually going to find anybody who's ever going to be like, hey, that coup in 2014, right? There was a coup in 2014, and that kicked this whole thing off, right? The Donbass War happened after the coup in 2014 when the Ukrainians started fighting the ethnic Russians who were rebelling against the coup, right? You're never going to see anybody actually talking that way. And so let's take the nicest possible tack with this, right? Is that what you're doing is taking a side and not listening to alternative sources, right? And the reason why I have come to dismiss these sorts of things is because of the long, tremendously long history of them lying to us. Like, newspapers like this were exactly the newspapers. Newspapers like this were exactly the newspapers that lied us into the Iraq War. Newspapers like this. Well, then you might actually start asking yourself, Aaron. So, if RT says there was a coup in Ukraine in 2014, does that make it false? Like, I get accused of being a Russian propagandist myself because I tell the truth about what happened. Right? Like, that there's the Russian side, there's NATO's side, there's the Ukrainian side, and then there's the truth. And the truth is there for us to discover and to try to uncover. And I simply do not buy in to anything the NATO side says about how the war is going. Here, this is a thing I've said several times. And people in the chat can, yeah, of course it is. That's the history. Like, you should be thinking that. And if you're not thinking that, then you're not doing this right, as far as I'm concerned. You should begin with, how's the CIA involved? That's the first thing that you should be asking yourself. Because they are. And to pretend like they're not is Looney Tunes to me. Like, the history is on our side. Like, Operation Mockingbird alone should convince you of that. And when this war started, I said, everyone is incentivized to lie. It's very difficult to decipher what the truth actually is. Because everybody is incentivized to lie. And moreover, they should lie. That it's war. So they're trying to fight a war, right? And deception is part of warfare. So why would NATO lie about how the war is going, right? Well, why would Russia lie about how the war is going? Both sides are going to lie about how the war is going so that they can maintain critical support at home. That's the reason everybody lies, right? It's the reason why you get, like, the Ghost of Kiev stories. It's the reason why you get these sort of fanciful narratives. The reason why there's all of this rhetoric around nuclear power plants. There's the reason why there's all this fear-mongering around blowing up dams, things like this, is because it's in everybody's interest to tell lies about what's going on in order to maintain critical support at home. It's the reason they lie, right? And if you are doing war correctly, you should lie. Like, you should. You want there to be confusion and chaos on the enemy side. You don't want the enemy to know what you're doing. So you want to lie. And then on top of that, you also lie to your own people. And the reason why you lie to your own people is to try to convince them to continue accepting taxation and accepting death, accepting the loss of life, and accepting what's going on in their home life and in their real life, accepting a loss of wages, increased taxation, right? A burden. Because there's this idea that there will be a payoff, that we will be victorious, that we will win. And no general, certainly not one that's sitting on the board of directors of NATO, is going to go onto a podcast and say anything other than, we're kicking ass and we're taking names and the fighting's as hard as it's ever been, and every single penny we've ever sent to anyone has 100% gone to the front line, and no Ukrainian has ever died, and we're like, obviously. It's the reason why I don't listen to them. Because I know exactly what their narrative is. Right? And you're coming in and basically laying it out. Basically just saying, NATO says the war is going swimmingly. Yeah, of course NATO's going to say that. Right? Russia's going to say the same thing. So, proof's in the pudding. Right? Proof's in the pudding. Where's the battle line? The battle line is drawn where the Russians want it to be drawn. Have the Ukrainians moved the battle line? No. Have the Ukrainians ever moved the battle line? No. I mean, okay. So this is what's called deflection, Aaron. Right? Like, you've lost on your front. Where's the battle line, Aaron? Like, all you're doing is deflection. So I'm going to sit down and listen to a guy basically say, war's going great. Where's the battle line? We know where the battle line is. I can show it to you. Right? Who's moved that battle line? Which direction has it gone? Like, just because NATO says so doesn't change the fabric of reality. Right? Like, I don't need some NATO guy. They pushed the Russians away from Kiev. The Russians left Kiev and Kharkiv. They left. They weren't pushed away. Like, in the early days of the war, the Russians came in from the border. Here, let's bring up the map. I was reporting on this basically as it was happening. So I have a pretty good... I didn't need to put .ca. Oh well, there it is. So the Russians, when they came in to Ukraine, they came in from Belarus all around the border, right? They came in from all sides, which was a bad idea, right? I'll call it how it is. Not the greatest idea. Cotton Man, I don't know what you're on about, bud, but you keep doing you. The Russians came in from all sides, right? And it seems pretty clear to me that the narrative that Putin wanted a quick resolution to the conflict seems correct, right? That Putin was calling it a special military operation, He wasn't going in there saying, we're gonna we're gonna spread democracy throughout Ukraine, right? Like, he's going in for a special military operation. I think it's correct to say that he wanted to. He was hoping that doing so would spook a resolution. And then there's a period of time where basically the Russians are on that border, and they're just kind of wallowing, right, on this border, more or less. And then they realize it's not working, that they're not getting the success that they want, they're not getting the result that they want, and so they leave. Right? They're not pushed out. They leave. And so they're forming a battle line. In September 2022, so this is like a while back, annexed 4 oblasts, 0 of which they've been able to capture. They lost 1 regional capital they captured since 2022. They've never captured the capital on the... Okay. Like, all I have ever seen Russia ever do is draw this line along the river, right? And then draw this line here and then push this line forward. Capturing Luhansk, capturing Donetsk, which is the point. Right? That the reason why they're not pushing forward from this, like, you're basically just saying they never captured territory they didn't want to capture. So, like, the whole point of this is to seize control of the Donbass region. That if there's any region that they want to seize, it's Kharkiv. Right? And they want this region here. And so there's fighting along these lines, right? And basically the river from here, this is Russian territory, this is certainly Russian territory. Then you've got a battle line drawn approximately over here. Basically, you're saying that because Russia reconfigured itself and moved into a new pattern, into a new war, that's a push-out. And that's the great success that happened a year ago. Like 7 months ago. Okay. So 7 months ago, you know what my favorite thing to do? Right? Here's my favorite thing to do, Aaron. Right? So my favorite thing to do is just concede, just for fun, just as an intellectual procedure. Okay, you're right. So in September 2022, Ukraine pushed them out. Get out of here. That happened. How many months ago is that exactly? Like 8 months ago? Okay. Oh, there will be more pushes. Okay. Okay, then we'll wait. And we'll see. Because that's basically where we're at now, right? Like, you and I obviously disagree on what actually is going on, right? And only time will tell. And here's the tricky thing for you, Aaron, right? Is that you are obviously on the side of frauds and liars. Like, who have done nothing but lie, who have done nothing but act fraudulently, who have done nothing but tell you bullshit your whole fucking life. Like, literally all they've ever done to you is bullshit you ever. Full stop. And you're basically just saying, the liars are saying this, and I'm trusting those liars. No, okay. Yeah, we will see. We'll see. Like, I don't, like, this isn't a sport, right? Like, this isn't like a choosing sides kind of situation. That this is commenting on war, and I don't really take people who have proven themselves to be well-known liars and frauds very seriously. And if we've come to a point where basically you're saying, yeah, we'll just trust the frauds and liars, okay. You're going to learn this lesson, and we're going to go through it together, Aaron. We're going to go through it together. You're going to march with me step by step, moment by moment, right? We're going to go through it. And in like 5 years, right? Like, this territory is never coming back. It is gone. Gonzo finito. Farewell. NATO does not have the capacity, nor does Ukraine have the capacity to seize this territory back. Full stop, they do not. They don't have the equipment, they don't have the men. Like, 60 days of counteroffensive, Ukraine can't even reach the first Russian line of defense. Like, conflict's over. Conflict's over. Unless you're a general that wants more taxes. Like, unless you're a NATO general who wants more taxes, then it's the hardest fighting we've ever seen, and the Ukrainians are going to break through at any moment. Like, no. Like, Russia has more men, they've got more capacity, and moreover, right? Like, Russia does view this as an existential threat. Like, that's just the truth of the matter. Like, NATO does not view that this is an existential threat. Ukrainians certainly do, right? But NATO doesn't give a shit about Ukraine. NATO's happy to carve it up and purchase their property, right? Decide that they don't want it? No. That their whole Cassius belly for going in, the whole thing, the whole argument was to get this region. Right? They're not going to withdraw. Can you imagine what would happen to Putin and his military men if they declared to withdraw from this? They'd be lynched publicly. Like, it would be brutal for them. That their own people would turn on them. For sure. Like, the Russian people have been involved in this the whole time. Like, the Russian people have been involved in this the whole time. When Putin declared when he did a draft, right? A mobilization, as they called it, right? When they did the mobilization, it dropped his poll numbers pretty significantly, right? People wanted that special military operation to work. People were on board for that. They hoped it was going to work, and it didn't. And now it's turned into this grinding war of attrition that the Russians are winning. Like, this territory is Russian territory. Whether or not it becomes its own state or whether or not it becomes fully annexed into Russia, to be determined. We'll see how that all shakes out. I would be I'm somewhat under the impression that Moscow would like to turn into like a Belarus sort of situation. But again, we'll see. It might just become a province of Russia. Ukrainians are never getting this back. I think that's crazy cuckoo, go nuts. I mean, they've said so, but how it all shakes out, right? Like, when it finally comes down to it and there is a discussion between Russia and Europe and the world powers, like, what does it actually look like, right? Yeah, they said so, great, but the entire rest of the world needs to acknowledge it. Like, just because Russia said so doesn't mean anything. Like, there's agreements to be drawn up, there's treaties to be signed. Like, so this territory that you admit that they annexed, like, it's never going back into Ukraine. Like, it's gone. That's done. And I don't really get where this narrative comes from that says something else is going to happen. Right? Does Russia have more willpower? Yeah. I mean, Russia has more men. Russia has more weapons. Like, yeah, Russia has more willpower. Like, this is something that's happening on their border. Like, I just don't think this is well understood. Like, if you're in Germany, right? Here's Germany. Here's the border. Here's the conflict. Germany, conflict. Even if you're in Poland, right? There's Moscow. There's the fighting. You can like drive to it in a day. Vietnam lost all the battles but won the war. I think the big difference there is that the Vietnamese never wanted the Americans there. That the people of the Donbass region want the Russians there. Like, the people of the Donbass are not fighting the Russians. The Vietnamese were fighting the Americans, right? That to me seems to be the key difference, and why your example doesn't really fly. Because there's nobody. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody, but there's a very vanishingly small group of people who are like, let's get these Russians out of here in this area. Everybody else is like, thank God the Russians are here, right? Like, thank God the Russians are here. Like, they're coming in and they're going to put an end to this war. Like, the Donbass war was a significant conflict for these people. It lasted from 2014 until Putin's invasion. Like, it's a significant change in the tone of how all of this goes, right? See, Aaron, this is what's crazy to me about your position. Why do you really think that pushing back a nuclear power, like, are you going to march on Moscow? Like, it's such a bad idea. Like, the smartest thing to do right now is to settle with a treaty. That Zelensky is essentially selling Ukraine off now. Like, this is another reason why, how you know the war is over, right? Zelensky isn't like creating a national unity and like all that kind of stuff. He's literally carving Ukraine up and selling it. He's privatizing everything, right? Like, I just don't really see, outside of like NATO says so. Like, I just don't see it, and we're way past my time. I gotta go. But like, I'm utterly unconvinced because I don't really believe what NATO has to say about anything. Like, yeah, they want your taxes, so they're going to say the war is going swimmingly. Can we have another $10 billion? Taxpayers? Of course they're going to say that. Like, and the whole, like, this is actually weird. This whole argument that, like, the Russians got pushed out. That's weird. That's a really weird argument. Like, no, they repositioned after a failed attempt. That's what happened. That they came in hoping that one thing was going to happen. It didn't happen, and then they just went and took over the Donbass region. And like, they took over the Donbass region like immediately. What a dumb point. Yeah, I don't listen to liars when they lie, bud. Like, it's just a dumb point. Like, we know what NATO says. We don't need to listen to a 2-hour podcast about it. Like, we know what NATO says. Like, it's just a dumb point. So you can feel smug about it. And when this conflict ends, and this is part of Russia, and Ukraine is completely privatized, right? We'll know what's what. You just keep on believing liars when they lie to you, my man. What do they say? They say the war is going swimmingly. Keep sending money into Ukraine. The Ukrainians are fighting. The fighting's gone as hard as it's ever gone, right? Like, we're winning. We just got... And you know what, man? Aaron, what's great? They said the same thing about Iraq. They said the same thing about Afghanistan. Right? They say the same thing about every war. It's the same thing every single time. Why? Because they want your money. All right, I'm tired of trying to convince somebody who won't listen. So, we're done. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes. You won't realize it. Case in point. You'll just stay the good little commodity they want you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck.